Chapter 760. While these people were talking, Yang Kai had already arrived and rushed over to An Ling frowning as he stared at her. An Ling burst into tears as she glanced over at Yang Kai and anxiously asked, "Why are you here? Why haven't you left yet?" "I can't." Yang Kai calmly shook his head. "That woman's divine sense is locked onto me." "Ah." An Ling covered her mouth, her beautiful eyes trembling as she stared towards Yang Kai with some sympathy. "Who is she? Why is she targeting me? Does it have something to do with you?" Yang Kai looked annoyed as he asked several questions in a row. "You're that little brat who hitched a ride before?" Qian Ning squinted towards Yang Kai, his expression ugly. Originally, this kind of situation was enough to give the people from Nine Heavens Holy Land enough headaches, but now Yang Kai had suddenly appeared here and was constantly questioning them. Qian Ning's anger suddenly showed signs of erupting as he waved his hand and shouted, "Scram, do you think you have the right to speak here?" Saying so, a yuan qi suddenly shot towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai's expression remained cold as he didn't bother hiding his strength, casually waving his hand and dispersing Qian Ning's attack, his body remaining motionless while his expression remained calm. "Achem!" Qian Ning was stunned as he stared at Yang Kai, seemingly not having expected that this little brat would be able to so easily resolve his attack. "I have no intention of becoming enemies with you, I just want to figure out why that woman is targeting me," Yang Kai said with an impatient look on his face as he shot a cold glare towards Qian Ning, indicating his position and attitude before turning his eyes back to An Ling "Uncle Qian." An Ling raised her hand, stopping Qian Ning's restlessness before turning to Yang Kai and smiling bitterly. "You being targeted is your own fault." "What do you mean?" "It's probably because you've learned the Nine Heavens divine skills." As soon as this statement came out, the expressions of the several transcendent realm masters from Nine Heavens Holy Land all changed greatly as they stared at Yang Kai in disbelief. Qian Ning was even more dumbfounded. "Look at Yang Kai." She then looked at An Ling and exclaimed, How did he learn the Nine Heavens divine skills?" The Nine Heavens divine skills were something that only the highest echelons of the Holy Land were qualified to learn. Even Qian Ning had never learned it. "You're courting death." Yang Kai's face suddenly turned ferocious. He hadn't expected that An Ling would reveal such a great secret in front of so many people. Once this secret was exposed, he would have no choice but to stand on the opposite side of Nine Heavens Holy Land. "What does it matter?" An Ling smiled bitterly. "They're going to die anyway, so it doesn't matter if they know." "Young miss, what's going on?" Qian Ning asked hastily with a shocked and bewildered expression. Obviously, he had some guesses in his heart. "Just as you thought." An Ling wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes and whispered, "The man in front of you. You've passed my test and comprehended 3 Nine Heavens divine skills at once." Everyone was flabbergasted, their eyes almost popping out of their sockets. After a long silence, Qian Ning seemed to come back to his senses and said with difficulty, Then wouldn't he be the perfect candidate for the Holy Master?" "An Ling nodded lightly. The look Qian Ning and the others directed towards Yang Kai suddenly changed, becoming respectful and expectant. "But it's too late now, Grandma Nan has already found this place." An Ling smiled bitterly as she listened to her. The expressions of Qian Ning and the others also suddenly became gloomy. "I don't care what Holy Master you're talking about. You'll have to explain this matter to me." "Who is that woman? You should know her, right?" Yang Kai temporarily suppressed the murderous intent in his heart and pointed towards the woman standing mid-air who was staring towards them coldly. An Ling had already exposed his secret, so there was no point in holding her accountable now. Yang Kai only wanted to figure out who this woman who had suddenly appeared was and why she had chosen to kill so many people without saying a word, even locking her divine sense onto him. "It's Grandma Nan." An Ling replied softly. "Grandma Nan?" The only surviving saintess of the Holy Land's previous generation. Yang Kai was dumbfounded and asked in surprise, "Is there some kind of internal strife in your Nine Heavens Holy Land? Why would the previous generation's saintess be so hostile towards you?" An Ling shook her head bitterly. "Grandma Nan is very good to me, how could there be internal strife?" Do you remember what I said to you?" "What?" As the saintess of Nine Heavens Holy Land, she will not kill a single person in her lifetime. What does that have to do with the current situation? Yang Kai was puzzled. That's only the first half, there's another half. And Ling Er's voice trembled slightly, showing the panic in her heart as she muttered, not killing a single person in her lifetime, but after death she will slaughter 1,000,000 corpses. Yang Kai's expression was dull as he frowned. What does that mean? The saintesses of the Holy Land really won't kill any living beings in their lifetime, but once they die, if their bodies aren't destroyed in time, they will fall into the Asura's path, slaughtering all living beings who can sense their Tao. This is probably a drawback of the secret art we cultivate. And Ling Er took a deep breath, so after the death of every saintess, their bodies will be quickly burned to avoid a situation like this. Before we set off, Grandma Nan was fine, so how could she suddenly? Yang Kai suddenly realized why he felt a faint death chi from this woman. According to what An Ling Er said, this previous saintess called Grandma Nan should already be dead. The dead could still move. Yang Kai had seen this before. The coffin-carrying man was one of the living dead. He had passed away many years ago, but there was still a strong obsession in his heart. His tyrannical cultivation and obsession supported him, so even after his death, he continued to fulfill his responsibility and search for a savior for the ancient demon clan. In other words, this saintess called Grandma Nan should also have a strong obsession in her heart, otherwise she wouldn't have been able to support her actions. Saintess Nan and Holy Master's hearts were tied together, probably because Holy Master fell. Saintess Nan. Qian Ning sighed heavily. What the hell is your Nine Heavens Holy Land doing? You actually released such a dangerous person. Yang Kai was furious. Being targeted by a Saint Realm Master made him feel like he was about to die, so naturally his mood wasn't very good. What's the point of saying all this now? And Ling Er glared at him. Because we cultivate the same secret art, Grandma Nan has already found me. If anyone in this nearby archipelago can't resist her, I'm afraid they will all die. After killing me, she will go after my 3 sisters. Only when she destroys them will she stop her slaughter. Until then, she will regard any living being she encounters as an enemy. The most powerful person in the nearby archipelago was Qian Ning, a trivial third-order transcendent, so it was impossible for him to resist the previous generation's saintess who was a Saint Realm Master. No matter what, young lady and the future Holy Master must not meet any mishap. Qian Ning's expression suddenly became firm as he stared at Yang Kai solemnly. Little brother, although you haven't entered the Holy Land yet, since you have passed the young lady's test, you will become its Holy Master sooner or later. Please take the young lady and leave this place quickly. Even if you have to survive, the young lady will protect your safety with her life. Yang Kai's expression remained indifferent. Although Qian Ning's words made him feel somewhat moved, it was impossible for him to become the Holy Master of Nine Heavens Holy Land. Qian Ning was simply playing the lute to a cow. You two hurry up and leave, we'll hold them off for a while. You think too highly of yourselves. Yang Kai coldly snorted, you're courting death. Besides, where can the 2 of us escape? There is no place nearby where we can. Before he could finish his words though, Yang Kai's eyes suddenly lit up as he thought of a possibility, turning his gaze towards a certain location out in the sea. And Ling Er also seemed to have thought of this possibility and exchanged a glance with Yang Kai, both of them understanding what the other was thinking. While the 3 of them were speaking, Saintess Nan, who was hovering in the sky, had been watching with cold eyes, not in a hurry to act, a look of hesitation flashing across her face. Obviously, the reason she had when she was alive was preventing her from acting at this moment, but obviously this wouldn't last long as a cold murderous intent gradually began to radiate from her body. Little brother, if you die, it's fine, but if you survive, I hope you can go to the Holy Land and take over the position of Holy Master. The Holy Land cannot be without a Holy Master. Qian Ning patted Yang Kai's shoulder heavily and exhorted. Yang Kai was speechless. Go, run as far as you can. Qian Ning took a deep breath and stared towards Saintess Nan in the sky. The expression on the other party's face was constantly changing, and gradually, the previous hesitation were replaced by a ferocious and violent one. A thick murderous intent overflowed from her body and the outer islands suddenly became like a ghost town. Yang Kai didn't dare to hesitate, grabbing An Ling Er and spreading his wind and thunder wings behind him, he shot off like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, Saintess Nan waved her hand and unleashed a barrage of attacks at them. Qian Ning, together with the other masters from Nine Heavens' Holy Land, all wore dignified expressions as they rushed forward. Uncle Qian and the others. And Ling turned around and said anxiously, "They're dead." Yang Kai's expression became solemn as he increased his speed, bringing Ling to the surface of the sea. Releasing his Yuan Qi, he wrapped the two of them in it and quickly sank into the sea. While sinking, Yang Kai glanced up and saw Qian Ning's group explode into a bloody mist mid-air. None of them had lasted more than 3 breaths against Saintess Nan. After killing Qian Ning and the others, Saintess Nan still refused to give up, waving her profound heavenly sword and quickly destroying the island where Qian Ning and the others had been standing. Large chunks of land sank into the sea, causing countless deaths and injuries. In the next moment, the huge profound heavenly sword was thrown out by Saintess Nan, breaking through the obstruction of the sea and chasing after Yang Kai and Ling. Yang Kai felt a chill run down his spine as he pushed his true qi violently, pushing his speed to its limit, but he was still unable to escape. The giant sword continued to advance through the sea without any hindrance, directly splitting the dark blue water in half. Chapter 761. Looking up, amidst the blue water, a massive sword exuding a shocking energy fluctuation was chasing after them, the murderous intent radiating from it causing Yang Kai's hair to stand on end. Behind this giant sword, Yang Kai also vaguely saw the figure of the previous generation's saintess. She had also chased after them, seemingly determined to kill Yang Kai and Ling as soon as possible. As they dove deeper, Yang Kai hurriedly whispered into Ling's ear, "If you want to live, do something, now is not the time for you to grieve." Hearing this, Ling nodded quickly, sending out a strand of Yuan Qi into Yang Kai's body. In an instant, Yang Kai felt the flow of Yuan Qi in his body become much faster. The Nine Heavens Holy Land Saintess' secret art allowed Yang Kai to enhance his combat effectiveness for a short time, which was why he had brought Ling along with him when he was escaping. As the Yuan Qi burst forth, the profound heavenly sword, which was also one of the Nine Heavens' divine skills, also shone brilliantly in Yang Kai's hands. However, even with Ling's support, Yang Kai could only create a profound heavenly sword a few dozen meters long, far inferior to Saintess Nan's. The two Nine Heavens' divine skills rushed towards each other in diametrically opposite directions and collided a moment later. A huge muffled bang rang out as Yang Kai's profound heavenly sword was instantly reduced to dust. The surrounding seawater churned violently, the resulting shockwave pushing Yang Kai and Ling down a great distance. Saintess Nan's figure also seemed to be hindered for a moment, but soon she was able to catch up again. "What kind of weakness does your Nine Heavens Saintess have?" Yang Kai asked anxiously. "None, unless one is stronger than her, but I can try to stop her for a while." Ling grit her teeth and allowed Yang Kai to hold her as they fell, a burst of spiritual energy bursting out from her mind and rushing towards Saintess Nan. Yang Kai seemed to hear the sound of a song, one that seemed to originate from the depths of one's soul. Under the influence of this song, one couldn't help becoming lazy and relaxed. His expression becoming solemn, Yang Kai didn't dare act carelessly. Yang Kai secretly thought this soul skill. It should be similar to the one Ling had used in the Soul Battle Hall and had a soothing effect. Saintess Nan was already a dead person, only her obsession was supporting her actions. Using this kind of soul skill to deal with her was undoubtedly the right thing to do. In his perception, Saintess Nan's movements had indeed been affected, and her speed had also slowed down. Moreover, the true essence fluctuations on her body were extremely unstable, as if she was suffering a great deal. "That's it. Yang Kai, Yang Kai, Yang Kai, Yang Kai, Yang Kai, Yang with he. I won't be able to hold on for long," and Ling's pretty face paled as she said softly. Yang Kai turned his head to look at her and found that she was also wearing a pained expression. Yang Kai immediately understood that with her cultivation, using a soul skill to deal with Saintess Nan would definitely result in a backlash. Yang Kai's expression became dignified as he tried to think of a way to stall for time. Yang Kai had many methods at his disposal right now, but the gap between his strength and his opponents was simply too great. Ordinary methods wouldn't work at all. The soul battle hall would probably work. After all, it was a saint-grade artifact. However, once it was used, Yang Kai's soul would be dragged into that white space, engaging in a divine sense battle with Saintess Nan in such a place. Yang Kai wasn't certain he could win. The demon eye of annihilation was also extremely powerful, but Saintess Nan's soul couldn't break into his knowledge sea. The demon eye of annihilation was simply useless. In addition to purifying the spiritual energy that had broken into Yang Kai's knowledge sea, it could only absorb the soul of a dead cultivator. In other words, this Saintess Nan wasn't technically dead, otherwise, the demon eye of annihilation would have already taken effect. Thinking about it for a long time, Yang Kai still couldn't think of a way, causing him to feel anxious. At that moment, the song that had been ringing in his ears suddenly stopped. The moment the song was interrupted, Enlinger spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed into Yang Kai's arms, gasping for breath, looking extremely weak. Without Enlinger's interference, Saintess Nan once again regained her previous speed, closing the distance between her and Yang Kai. Fortunately, the huge profound heavenly sword had disappeared, so until she reached a certain distance, Yang Kai was still safe. As he dove deeper and deeper, countless sea beasts and fishes swam around him, but Yang Kai didn't care about them. On the other hand, Saintess Nan, as Enlinger had said, wherever she passed, she cut down all life forms, killing all sea beasts and fishes. Although killing these creatures didn't take much effort, it did slightly slow down the speed of Saintess Nan's pursuit. Yang Kai had never felt time pass so slowly. Being chased by a Saint Realm master like a maggot, his life was in constant danger, making him feel like time was passing like years. When the brilliant light of the corals flashed below, Yang Kai couldn't help shaking his spirit and calling out, "We're almost there." Hearing this, Enlinger opened her eyes and asked weakly, "At this time, can you tell me what your name is? At the very least, if I die, I should know whose arms I died in, right?" Yang Kai frowned, really not understanding what kind of brain structure this woman had, actually asking such a boring question. However, this time he didn't give her a perfunctory answer and instead told her his real name. Enlinger pursed her lips and smiled bitterly, "If we can survive, will you follow me back to the Holy Land?" Scram. Yang Kai bluntly refused, "If you keep nagging, I'll leave you here." Heartless bastard. As they spoke, they arrived at the barrier of the ancient ruins. Yang Kai directly rushed in, but the barrier didn't stop him in the slightest. After entering the barrier, without the obstruction of the sea, Yang Kai's speed finally recovered, the wind and thunder wings behind him bursting forth with the power of wind and thunder. Yang Kai and Enlinger shot out like arrows from a bow towards the void corridor they had found before, leaving behind after-images along the way. It was as if there were countless copies of Yang Kai and Enlinger. Less than 10 breaths after the two of them rushed into the barrier, Saintess Nan also rushed in, her tender body flickering and disappearing into the distance, her speed no slower than Yang Kai's. Under her terrifying pressure, Yang Kai could only run away, he had no intention of fighting her. As they continued to move forward, the Yang attribute energy coming from the void corridor became stronger and stronger, indicating that the two of them were getting closer and closer to the void corridor. Yang Kai clenched his teeth, not daring to relax in the slightest. Suddenly, a burst of Yuan Qi came from behind him, causing Yang Kai's expression to change, realizing that Saintess Nan had made another move. Immediately becoming vigilant, he paid close attention to the surrounding movements. In front of him, a giant net appeared and enveloped him. "Capturing Heaven Net," Enlinger exclaimed, "Avoid it quickly, once you touch it, even your soul cannot escape." There was no need for her to remind him. Although Yang Kai didn't quite understand what this divine skill was, he was still an experienced fighter, so naturally he had already turned around and avoided the capturing Heaven Net's range. Failing to hit him, another shocking energy fluctuation came from behind him. High up in the sky, a jade-white hand that seemed to have been magnified thousands of times slowly slammed down. When this giant hand entered Yang Kai's eyes, he couldn't help but feel as if the entire world was being covered by this giant hand. There was no escape, only darkness in front of him, no light at all. "Heaven-covering hand," Enlinger muttered, her face ashen, the corners of her mouth curling into a bleak smile, her beautiful eyes slowly closing, as if she couldn't escape this time no matter what. In the end, she was going to die here. Become the demon race. Yang Kai's low whisper suddenly rang out, and in the next moment, the world trembled as an extremely violent demonic chi suddenly spread out from his body, transforming into demon crests and disappearing into Yang Kai's flesh. Yang Kai's blood force became extremely turbulent, and his aura soared madly. And Linga suddenly opened her eyes, her tender body trembling as she stared blankly at the man beside her who had not let go of her, her beautiful eyes filled with disbelief. At this moment, she felt that Yang Kai seemed to have changed into a completely different person, full of evil, bloodthirsty, and cruel aura, but more reliable than before. That stalwart figure was like a towering mountain, and no matter how the wind blew or the rain fell, it would not budge. This towering mountain broke through the blockade of the heaven-covering hand, and before the devastating attack arrived, it found a glimmer of hope, bringing a glimmer of light. Hong. Inside the ancient ruins, countless houses collapsed, and a shockwave visible to the naked eye suddenly spread out from Yang Kai's position, rushing out to the edge of the ruins, rolling up the seawater. Yang Kai let out a muffled groan, his face pale. At the same time, Linga also felt the wetness on her face, reaching out to wipe it, only to find that it was actually the blood from Yang Kai's mouth. Obviously, he had not completely avoided the heaven-covering hand just now, but even so, he was still standing tall. Fuck. Yang Kai cursed in a low voice, quickly escaping from the scene while glancing at his abdomen. Following his gaze, Linga looked suspiciously and couldn't help covering her mouth as she cried out, "Heaven-punishing spear." At some point, a dazzling divine spear had been inserted into Yang Kai's abdomen. This divine spear was also one of the 9 heavens' divine skills. In the chaos and shock, not only did Linga not notice it, but even Yang Kai was unable to avoid it, his body directly pierced through. Blood dyed his clothes red, and if one looked carefully, there was a faint golden light. Linga suddenly burst into tears, feeling that this time there was really no hope. She knew the power of the 9 heavens' divine skills better than anyone, not to mention this was displayed by Saintess Nan, not holding back in the slightest. No matter how extraordinary Yang Kai was, with such an attack penetrating his body, it was likely that his internal organs would have been crushed to pieces, not far from death. The reason why he had not fallen and was still running was because he still had one last breath left. Thinking of this, Linga's heart was filled with guilt and regret. Chapter 762. Linga felt that if she hadn't used her soul skill on Yang Kai back in the Soul Battle Hall, he wouldn't have been able to comprehend the 9 heavens' divine skills. If he hadn't comprehended the 9 heavens' divine skills, he wouldn't have been targeted by Saintess Nan. Thinking of all this, Linga was naturally filled with guilt, feeling that she had harmed Yang Kai, causing him to die at such a young age. Damn it, you better teach me those moves, otherwise I'll suffer a great loss this time. Yang Kai's face was as white as paper, and while enduring the severe pain in his body, he anxiously cursed. He hadn't expected that the heaven-punishing spear would be able to penetrate his body. After become the demon race, Yang Kai's physique had become unbelievably strong, even able to resist the Starfield storm head-on, but he had still been unable to block Saintess Nan's killing move. It was obvious how powerful this move was. If it had been any other transcendent, facing this move from Saintess Nan, it was likely they would have been torn to shreds. At this time, you're still thinking about this. Linga stretched out her small hand and covered the wound on Yang Kai's body, feeling the blood flowing out from her fingertips, her heart filled with panic as tears continued to fall, soaking his clothes. Can you stop crying? You're making father feel uncomfortable. Yang Kai snorted disdainfully. How can you women not bear the pressure? Hearing him say this, Linga quickly stopped crying, but she couldn't stop the sobbing, and she couldn't stop the tears from flowing. Around the corner in front of them, about 10 meters off the ground, a pitch-black hole suddenly appeared. Yang Kai smiled happily. We're here. Accelerating on the spot, Yang Kai leapt up into the air and rushed into the void corridor with Linga. Just as he stepped into the void tunnel, Saintess Nan's killing move had already arrived. Now that he had reached the final juncture, how could Yang Kai lower his guard? Directly throwing Linga into the void corridor, Yang Kai turned around. Accompanied by a loud dragon roar, a huge black dragon suddenly appeared behind Yang Kai. The dragon's maw was ferocious. Facing Saintess Nan's killing move head-on. Hong long long. Energy raged and the world energy aura became chaotic. The jet black flood dragon was only able to resist for a moment before it was scattered, allowing Saintess Nan's momentum to continue onwards towards Yang Kai and into the void corridor. Yang Kai grinned miserably as blood dripped down the corner of his mouth. Demonic chi filled with an evil aura surged wildly as it shot out in all directions. The void corridor that had existed at the bottom of the sea for who knew how many years could not withstand such an explosion of energy. Finally, it shattered, and the void force that erupted from it dissolved Saintess Nan's attack while simultaneously sweeping towards Yang Kai's body. In the next moment, Yang Kai's to fend to the Saintess to Yang. Yang Kai nearly fainted. Forcing himself to focus, Yang Kai tried to keep his mind clear. A moment later, the darkness in front of him was swept away and a scene of white clouds appeared above his head. There was no sun, moon, or stars in the blue sky, but there was a faint heat in the air. This kind of aura. It made Yang Kai feel very comfortable. Yang Kai felt like he was constantly falling. He should have been teleported to another place through the void corridor because he could no longer feel Saintess Nan's aura around him. Moreover, before he left, Yang Kai deliberately destroyed the void corridor so that even if Saintess Nan had extraordinary skills, she wouldn't be able to find this place in a short time. Considering all this, Yang Kai breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Being chased by a Saint Realm Master really wasn't a fun thing to do. On top of that, Saintess Nan should be at least a second-order saint. She was much stronger than Ice Sect's Chen Yu. In front of her, Yang Kai didn't even have the strength to fight back. His falling body was suddenly hugged by a pair of jade arms. Yang Kai turned his head and saw Ling who had arrived ahead of him, smiling at him, her face still wet with tears. Yang Kai struggled for a moment before jumping down from her arms and landing on the trunk of a large tree, gasping for breath as he swept his eyes around, a dumbfounded look appearing on his face. He and Ling were currently standing on the trunk of a towering tree. They were about 300 feet above the ground, surrounded by a dense forest. In this vast forest, life was full of vitality. Moreover, Yang Kai also discovered a very strange phenomenon. The trees here seemed to be somewhat different from the ones outside. Not only were they shaped differently, but there was also a faint yang attribute energy flowing from their trunks. Simply put, these trees seemed to possess a yang attribute aura. Yang Kai was puzzled. These trees should just be ordinary trees, not some kind of precious spirit grass, so how could they give off a yang attribute aura? Looking up at the scene in the sky again, Yang Kai frowned and muttered weakly, "A mysterious small world." Only mysterious small worlds had no suns, moons, or stars, such as the one the ancient demon clan lived in. Ah! A mysterious small world. And Ling was obviously taken aback, but her beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity. She had never been to a mysterious small world before and had only heard about its existence from rumors. Coming to this place for the first time, she couldn't help feeling a bit curious. This should be a sealed-off mysterious small world. Yang Kai nodded lightly, coughing violently as he spoke, blood flowing from the wounds on his body again. "You should rest quickly." And Ling anxiously supported him. Yang Kai's injuries this time were extremely serious. Not only had he been pierced by Saintess Nan's heaven-punishing spear, but when he had destroyed the void corridor at the last moment, he had also been struck by the explosive force of the void. His clothes were in tatters and his body was riddled with terrible scars. Even his flesh was missing a great deal, making him look extremely miserable. With such injuries, an average person would have died several times already, but Yang Kai still had the strength to speak and leisurely observe his surroundings, causing Ling to not know whether to laugh or cry. Saying so, she took out a bottle of pills from the universe bag at her waist and handed it over. "These are my Holy Land's healing saint pills, take them quickly." Yang Kai nodded lightly, also feeling like he was about to collapse, so he took the pill bottle and poured out a few pills before swallowing them directly. Before he had time to refine the medicinal efficacies though, Yang Kai suddenly felt a hot energy shoot towards him from all directions like a rope, wrapping around him and Ling. The two of them were caught off guard and were quickly tied up before falling to the ground. After landing, Yang Kai found that he couldn't move. Already an arrow at the end of its flight, Yang Kai directly fainted. Damn, how did I get caught again? With this last thought lingering in his mind, Yang Kai's face became extremely ugly. The 2 times he had entered a different mysterious small world, he had been caught both times. The first time, he had been captured by the coffin-carrying man, and this time, he had broken in on his own, but before he had time to figure out the terrain, he had encountered such misfortune. Hateful demon race people. Before Kai Yang lost consciousness, he vaguely heard a muffled curse. In front of his eyes, there seemed to be a few silhouettes moving. Soon after, he lost consciousness. In the pitch-black darkness, Yang Kai slowly woke up. There wasn't a single part of his body that wasn't aching. Even with his powerful physique, such a wound couldn't be ignored. Not sitting up immediately, Yang Kai quickly checked his current situation. After a while, Yang Kai's face became gloomy. Just as he thought, his Yuan Qi and Knowledge Sea had both been sealed. If he wanted to break through the Yuan Qi seal, it would take some effort, but it wasn't impossible. It should have been a master whose strength surpassed his. As for the seal on his Knowledge Sea, Yang Kai was confident he could easily break through it, but in order to avoid attracting attention, he still didn't dare act rashly. He didn't know where this place was, nor what kind of master existed, so if he acted rashly, he would likely end up in a very miserable state. However, what made Yang Kai somewhat concerned was that this seal gave off the same aura as his Yuan Qi, a Yang attribute energy. On top of that, the Yang attribute aura here was much denser than outside. The energy he felt in the ancient ruins should have seeped in from here. Yang Kai's injuries were almost healed, and from the extent of his recovery, it should have been at least 3 days since he fell unconscious. There was someone nearby, but it wasn't An Ling Er. Where did that woman go? This woman could be considered a heavenly beauty, so if she fell into the hands of someone with bad intentions, her fate would be worrying. Yang Kai was a little worried. His current location should be a prison cell. The walls of the prison cell were constructed with special wood, which appeared to be extremely sturdy. After a while, after adapting to the light in front of him, Yang Kai slowly sat up. The noise he made spread outside, and soon a person came over and said in surprise, "Hey, you brat, you're not dead yet. How are you so tough? Where is this place? Who are you?" Yang Kai looked at him and asked, "You talk too much. Be careful not to pull out your tongue." The man coldly snorted, his attitude unfriendly. He opened the door of the cell and said, "Get out here, my leader wants to see you." "Leader?" Yang Kai frowned. "You'd better behave yourself, or I'll bury you right now and use you as nutrients for the divine tree." The man tilted his head and glanced at Yang Kai, then walked in front of him and said, "Follow me." Yang Kai's expression changed, but he didn't say anything, quietly looking around as he followed the man. The dark and damp corridor was surrounded by the cells Yang Kai was in before, separated from each other. There were many people in each cell, and after hearing the noise, they all looked over with strange eyes. Yang Kai's face was filled with suspicion as he secretly observed the people imprisoned here, feeling that something was not quite right. The aura emitted from these people seemed to be different from ordinary people. Strictly speaking, there should be traces of demonic qi, and every one of them was like that. Among these people, Yang Kai didn't find any trace of An Ling Er, so he didn't know where she went. Chapter 763. Soon, Yang Kai followed the man out of the dungeon. After arriving outside, the man glanced back at Yang Kai, seemingly wanting to say something, but after seeing Yang Kai's current state, his expression couldn't help changing as he pointed at him dumbfoundedly. Your body, is there a problem?" Yang Kai's expression remained indifferent. "Weren't you about to die? How come your body?" Before, Yang Kai's body had lost a lot of flesh and blood and had even been pierced through, so his clansmen all thought that he would soon die. But now, he seemed to be completely unscathed, causing the man to be somewhat surprised and unable to accept this. "My restorative ability is much better than the average person's. That's a bit too amazing." The man stared at Yang Kai with a look of distrust before suddenly shouting coldly, "Boy, do you have some kind of healing pill or medicine? If you do, quickly take it out so you don't suffer. I don't have such a thing. Yang Kai shook his head indifferently. The man swept his eyes over Yang Kai, seemingly trying to find traces of his universe bag, but in the end, he couldn't find anything, obviously a bit disappointed. Gritting his teeth, he pushed Yang Kai aside and led him into a large hall. There were many people inside the hall, all of them with ruddy complexions and radiant auras. These people all exuded different levels of intensity, but all of them were clearly burning hot. Everyone here, whether male or female, old or young, actually cultivated yang attribute secret arts just like Yang Kai, and their cultivations weren't low either. The weakest among them was an immortal ascension boundary 8th stage cultivator, while several of them were transcendents. Inside the hall, more than a dozen people had gathered, led by an old man who exuded a powerful aura. This old man had a head of red hair and was radiating a dignified aura, giving him a youthful appearance. Beside the old man stood a young man with a square face. He wore a grey shirt. The faint yuan qi fluctuations coming from his body were also quite powerful. This young man. He should be a third-order transcendent. When Kai Yang arrived, this group of people seemed to be in the middle of discussing something. As soon as they saw him arrive, everyone cast surprised gazes towards him, no longer continuing the previous topic, instead showing a strong interest in him. Leader, I've brought him here. The person who led Yang Kai here cupped his fist and said. The old man sitting at the head of the table nodded lightly and waved his hand. The man respectfully withdrew, but before leaving, he gave Yang Kai a warning glare, hinting that he'd better behave himself. Yi Feng. This is the human you captured. The old man stroked his beard and nodded, his deep eyes looking at Yang Kai. As he spoke, Yang Kai clearly felt a burning aura seeping into his body, inspecting him from the inside out. Yes, leader, the young man standing to the side quickly responded, looking at Yang Kai with a strange expression. Didn't you say this human was about to die? How come he's standing here now? The old man asked again. Yi Feng scratched his head and frowned. I don't know. When I captured him, he really looked like he was about to die. I thought he wouldn't be able to live for more than a few days. Hey, little brat. What's going on with you? Yang Kai looked at him, then at the old man, frowning. From the tone of your voice, it seems you're not human. Only creatures of other races would refer to humans as such. Impudence. Yi Feng's expression became cold. Answer whatever I ask, you have no right to speak here. Saying so, he waved his hand and a burst of energy shot out from his hand, striking Yang Kai like a whip. With a bang, a bloody mark appeared on Yang Kai's body. With his yuan qi sealed, he couldn't resist such an attack. Yang Kai didn't move, grit his teeth, and glared at the young man with a ferocious expression. You've got some backbone. Yi Feng sneered, his yuan qi surging out from his hand, seemingly wanting to teach Yang Kai a lesson. Enough, Yi Feng. The old man suddenly raised his hand, stopping him from whipping Yang Kai, turning a slightly curious look towards Yang Kai and smiling. Human, you have some skill. If I'm not mistaken, your physique isn't inferior to an average saint, right? Is that so, leader? Yi Feng's expression changed as he said in surprise, but his cultivation is only at the first-order transcendent realm. He must have persisted in tempering his body, which is why he has today's achievements. He actually has such a strong body at such a young age. It's amazing. The old man had a look of praise, and then asked, how did you do it? Being whipped 10,000 times a day, anyone can do it, Yang Kai grinned. It's a stupid method, but it makes sense. The old man didn't know if he knew that Yang Kai was just being perfunctory or not, but he didn't pursue the matter and simply said, because you are a human, I spared your life and didn't kill you on the spot. If you were from the demon race, you wouldn't have been so lucky. Saying so, the old man's expression became cold as he quickly said, boy, I'll ask you some questions. If your answers satisfy me, I can let you live a few more days. If not, you know the consequences. Under the eaves, Yang Kai could only nod. Do you have some kind of relationship with the demon race? No relationship. No relationship. Then why are you here? Where did you come in from? The seabed. In one of the ancient ruins, there was a void corridor. My companion and I were being chased by a master and had no choice but to enter that void corridor. After we recovered, we found ourselves here. When young Kai was speaking, the old man stared at him closely, seemingly wanting to see if he was lying. After he finished speaking, the old man frowned and said, "Tell me what happened to you in detail." Under the other party's intense gaze, young Kai didn't hide anything and recounted his previous encounter. This old man's strength was unfathomable, and young Kai didn't know if he had some kind of special ability. Lying at this time could be counterproductive. Escaping from the hands of a Saint Realm master? The old man looked surprised. "Your skill isn't small. It was just good luck. I almost died." The old man nodded lightly, agreeing with young Kai's explanation. "Why do you think I have something to do with the demon race? Also, where is my companion now? What is her situation?" Young Kai asked. "Boy, you ask a lot of questions," Yi Feng coldly snorted. The old man also frowned, apparently not very happy with young Kai asking so many questions, but he still said, "Because only those from the demon race can enter this place, you are the first humans to arrive here. As for your companion, you don't need to worry, she is fine, only her freedom has been restricted." Saying so, he turned to Yi Feng and said, "Go investigate the place where you found them, see if there is another entrance. If you find one, destroy it immediately." Yi Feng was about to agree when young Kai cut him off. "There's no need to investigate, I destroyed that void corridor before we arrived." "Just because you say so?" Yi Feng glanced over at young Kai contemptuously before quickly leaving, apparently taking his people to investigate the situation in the forest. After he left, the old man continued, "Do you cultivate a young attribute secret art?" Young Kai nodded. The old man chuckled. "There aren't many humans who cultivate a young attribute secret art, but looking at you, it seems your secret art isn't bad, right?" Young Kai's expression became slightly cold, thinking that the old man was interested in his true young secret art, but the old man didn't seem to have any intention of asking, instead just saying, "But even if it is a good secret art, it is still far worse than ours." The old man spoke as if it was a matter of fact, while the others also wore proud looks, as if they all thought young Kai's secret art was trash. Young Kai's expression changed slightly as he asked, "You all seem to cultivate a young attribute secret art. What race are you, and where is this place?" "Us." The old man stroked his beard and muttered, "We can be considered humans, but we also aren't." Young Kai frowned, listening to the old man's words in confusion. "Our ancestors were humans, but our generation has become somewhat different from them," the old man lightly said, not explaining further. The old man said lightly, not explaining too much, "This is where we have always lived. You outsiders should call it a mysterious small world. I saw a lot of people imprisoned in that dungeon. Those should be members of the demon race, right? What kind of hatred do you have with the demon race? Little brat, you really have a lot of questions. It seems you aren't afraid of death." The old man glanced at him coldly, but then grit his teeth and said, "The hatred between us and the demon race is absolutely irreconcilable. Sooner or later, we will eradicate all the demon race. As for you, I won't kill you for the time being. Your body looks a bit different from the rest, it should be of great use." Saying so, he swept a malicious look towards young Kai and waved his hand, "Take him away." A person immediately rushed out from the side and took young Kai away. After he left, the people in the hall began to talk at once. "Leader, that little brat's physique is extraordinarily good, and what's more is that he cultivates a young attribute secret art. If he can be transformed into nutrients for the divine tree, I'm afraid the divine tree will be stable for a while. Ien, the divine tree has become more and more unstable recently. If this continues, I'm afraid we won't have a place to shelter ourselves. Capturing those demon race isn't a long-term solution. What we need to do now is find a way to solve the problem of the divine tree. If the divine tree is gone, I'm afraid our clan will suffer a catastrophe." "Shut up." The old man shouted, "Do you think this old master doesn't want to solve this problem? It's just that I haven't been able to find the root cause, so how can I solve it?" Hearing this, everyone's faces became gloomy. After a while, the old man ordered again, "Shu Qiu, you go and tell our clansmen to take good care of that little brat, give him the best food, lift the seal on his body, and send him a fruit from the divine tree. I want him to recover his peak strength as soon as possible." "Yes." The master named Shu Qiu quickly got up and walked out. Hearing this, everyone's spirits shook, knowing that their leader was making plans for the near future, so they couldn't help secretly looking forward to it. Chapter 764. In the same dark and damp dungeon as before, young Kai was brought here and locked up in another cell. Inside the cell, there was a somewhat bleak-looking figure curled up in a corner, sobbing sounds coming from inside. After hearing the movement, this person looked up and in an instant, her beautiful eyes flashed with surprise as she called out, "Young Kai?" Shouting like this, he hurriedly stood up and staggered over here, paying close attention to him. When he found that his injuries were basically healed, he also seemed a little surprised. After being brought here, Linger had been separated from young Kai. Like the others, she had thought that with the injuries young Kai had suffered, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled, but now that she saw him again, he was actually fine. Young Kai signaled to her with his eyes, indicating for her to calm down. After the two outsiders who had escorted him here left, he pulled her to the corner of the cell. "How are you?" Young Kai glanced at her and found that this little girl's clothes were neat, but her eyes were a little swollen from crying. Linger shook her head. "I'm fine, they didn't embarrass me." "What about you?" "I'm fine." Young Kai smiled. "Where is this place? Do you know who those people are? Why did they capture us?" "I'm not sure. But they don't seem to be from the human race, and they seem to have a great hatred for the demon race." While speaking, young Kai looked around the cells on both sides. Inside, there were pairs of eyes curiously looking at him and Linger, each of them exuding a demonic aura. These people should be members of the demon race who had been captured and brought here. "We just escaped the wolf's mouth only to enter the tiger's den," and Linger's face was gloomy, seemingly in a bad mood. "Relax, at least that Granny Nan won't be able to find this place for a while." Young Kai sat down. Compared to being chased by the previous generation's Saintess, this place was much safer. At the very least, young Kai felt that he wouldn't lose his life if he didn't use it for a while. Hearing him say this, Linger's mood suddenly improved. She sat down with young Kai and snuggled up to him. Young Kai didn't pay any more attention to her. Instead, he looked at the people from the demon race on the left and right. They should also have had their yuan qi and divine sense suppressed. Moreover, in this kind of place where yang energy was rich, their demonic qi would also be suppressed to varying degrees. There were at least a dozen people from the demon race locked up here, and their strength varied. As for what kind of cultivation they had, young Kai couldn't feel it. Since his sea of consciousness was sealed, he didn't dare to use his spiritual consciousness to spy on others. While he was observing, a person suddenly appeared outside the cell. Young Kai's face turned cold. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the man. Young Kai had seen this person before. It was the one sitting in the front of the hall. He should be one of the masters here. He stood outside the cell, looking at young Kai with an indifferent expression. A moment later, many of his clansmen came in carrying some things. "Open the cell door," the man ordered. Immediately, someone unlocked the cell door. These people filed in, bringing with them an enticing aroma. Young Kai was surprised because he found that these people were actually bringing in some very exquisite food and several pots of wine. "Boy, consider yourself lucky. The head ordered us to take good care of you." The man coldly snorted and waved his hand, sending a stream of yuan qi into young Kai's body. In the next moment, young Kai felt the seal on his body being lifted. The yuan qi once again flowed through his meridians, restoring his original strength. However, he did not act rashly. Since the other party had lifted the seal so easily, it was obvious they were not afraid of him causing any trouble. The fine wine and food were placed in front of young Kai one by one, but the master just stood in place, staring at him coldly. "What is the meaning of this?" Young Kai frowned. The attitude of the people here towards him was not good. For no reason, not only had the seal on his body been lifted, but they had also provided him with such good treatment, so he could not help but be a little vigilant. One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. "Nothing." The man sneered and slowly walked over. Flipping his palm, a pale yellow fruit about the size of a fist appeared in his hand. The moment this fruit appeared, young Kai felt a rich yang attribute qi and a fragrant aroma fill his nose. Raising his brow, Yang Kai stared at the fruit. Humph, this is a bargain for you, digest it properly. The man casually tossed the fruit over. Yang Kai caught it and looked at him suspiciously. The man did not say anything more and simply led his people away, locking the cell behind him. A moment later, this group of people disappeared. Looking at the fruit in his hand and the fine wine in front of him, Yang Kai was puzzled, but he could not understand what was going on. From the cell on the left, a burst of strange laughter suddenly came. Human boy, you are quite lucky, being able to eat a full meal before you die. It seems you are of great value to them. Yang Kai frowned and glanced sideways at the man, but the light was too dim so he could not see what this man looked like. Rolling his eyes, Yang Kai chuckled and said, "Friend, we are all people in distress, so there is no need to be so sarcastic. Would you like some?" "No need, you can count on your own luck." The man snorted and no longer spoke. "Will this be poisonous?" And Linger asked worriedly. "You think too much." Yang Kai shook his head. If they really wanted to kill him, there was no need for those people to play such a trick. Judging from the strength they had displayed, they were fully capable of killing him, so why would they put poison in his food? On top of that, the fruit that person had given him was also extraordinary. Yang Kai didn't recognize what kind of spirit fruit it was, only knowing that it was at least a spirit-grade top-rank fruit and that the yang attribute energy it contained was extremely rich. A single spirit fruit like this was enough to allow a cultivator like him to completely recover. "Eat, it won't get in the way," Yang Kai smiled, picked up a plate, and stuffed it into An Linger's hand. Yuan Qi and spiritual energy had been completely sealed, and with the previous shock, An Linger really needed to replenish her strength, so she did not hesitate and began chewing slowly. Yang Kai ate like a whirlwind, quickly replenishing his strength, not even letting go of the fruit, directly eating it. Soon, several drops of yang liquid appeared in the dantian. Over the next few days, someone delivered food every day. The food was exquisitely prepared and the taste was quite good. Yang Kai took things as they came, and after a few days, not only had his injuries healed, but his strength had also improved a little. Cultivating the true yang secret art in this place with rich yang attribute energy was really a heaven-sent opportunity. Every time he and An Linger received this kind of treatment, the prisoners of the demon race on the left and right side of the prison cells felt uncomfortable for a while. Although they were all prisoners, the difference in treatment was too great. They did not know what relationship Yang Kai had with the foreigners here. In the cell on the left, the demon race prisoner who had spoken before thought that Yang Kai would soon be killed, but over the past few days, not only did these people not cause trouble for him, they even continued to provide him with various benefits, leaving him speechless. About 5 days later, Yang Kai, who was meditating in his cell, suddenly felt that the yang attribute energy in the air was somewhat unstable, as if something had happened to the source of this energy. Frowning, he carefully examined it, but was unable to find any useful information. On the contrary, when the prisoners of the demon race on the left and right side of the prison cells felt this, their expressions changed greatly, and they all became silent. Uneasiness and irritation gradually spread, as if a great disaster was about to befall them. What happened to them? An Linger shrunk timidly beside Yang Kai and asked in a low voice. Yang Kai shook his head, a dignified expression on his face. There was a soft creak, followed by a burst of rapid footsteps. Several people quickly rushed in from the outside, and at the same time, all of the imprisoned demon race people began to curse loudly. All of them were extremely agitated, and it seemed as if they were ready to fight for their lives. But with all kinds of methods used to imprison them, they did not have the strength to fight back. With a burst of banging sounds, several of the demon race prisoners were quickly caught and thrown out. With a bang, the door of the prison cell was locked again. The rest of the prisoners were still shouting and cursing, but they did not get any response. "Enough, all of you shut up. What's the use of shouting here?" In the cell on the left, the demon race prisoner who had spoken to Yang Kai before angrily shouted. Everyone was silent. Yang Kai looked at him in surprise. This person seemed to have some reputation and prestige in the demon race, otherwise the others would not have obeyed him so much. After about an incense stick worth of time, the chaotic energy fluctuations in the air gradually calmed down and became stable. A feeling of sympathy for the death of a rabbit like the fox began to spread. All of the demon race people were dejected. Yang Kai's eyes flashed, secretly thinking that they should know more about this place than he did. Perhaps it was possible to obtain some information and clues from them. A day later, someone brought food and wine to Yang Kai's table again. Yang Kai didn't wolf down the food like before and instead walked over to the demon raceman next to him and called out, "Friend, would you like to join us for a drink? The taste of this wine is not bad." In the darkness, a pair of eyes slowly opened, overflowing with light. A moment later, a sneer came from the other side, revealing a sense of disdain and ridicule. "Although I am a human and you are from the demon race, the relationship between humans and demons has always been bad, but there is a saying that the enemy of an enemy is a friend. What do you think?" Yang Kai said with a pleasant expression on his face. The man's smile slowly disappeared, and after pondering for a while, he said in a deep voice, "Humph, you humans are treacherous, but you know how to be flexible." Saying so, he stood up and walked to the middle of the two cells, sat down cross-legged, and snatched the wine jug from Yang Kai's hand, drinking it in large mouthfuls. After a few breaths of time, the jug of wine had gone down his throat, and Yang Kai took out another jug and handed it to him. Seeing him so tactful, the demon race prisoner couldn't help but nod and say with disdain, "I look down on you humans the most, bowing to the strong and overbearing to the weak, insidious and cunning." "Ha." Yang Kai was not angry. "Drink first, we'll talk later." Chapter 765. After eating and drinking for a while, everything was quickly consumed. The demon raceman didn't seem to have the slightest understanding of the situation and instead continued to stare at Yang Kai contemptuously, as if he was looking down on an ant, his eyes filled with disdain. "What do you want to ask?" The man snorted, clearly seeing Yang Kai's intentions. Yang Kai chuckled, first introducing himself before asking, "I haven't asked for this friend's name yet." The man frowned, seemingly reluctant to report his name, but after thinking about it for a while, he still replied, "Go Che." Yang Kai sniffed but didn't respond, but Ling was startled for a moment before suddenly covering her mouth and exclaiming, "What's wrong?" Yang Kai turned to look at her. "You're Go Che?" Ling looked at the man from the demon race with a surprised expression. Heavens, you're actually Go Che. How did you end up here? Is he very famous?" Yang Kai looked at Ling in surprise and asked. Go Che snorted and curled his lips. "You little human brat, you looked quite smart before, so how come you're acting like a fool now?" "Sorry, I've never heard of you before." Yang Kai smiled faintly. Ling pursed her red lips and whispered, "Although I've heard of Go Che's name, it's not very famous. The famous one is his father, one of the 4 demon generals, Go Cheong." "Your father is a demon general?" Yang Kai was also taken aback. He had long heard of the demon general's name. Back in the ash-grey cloud Evil Land's evil cavern, he had even killed a demon general's soul clone. After coming to Tongxian realm, Yang Kai learned from Shui Ling about the terrifying strength of the demon general, so he was well aware of what kind of character the demon general was. "My father is my father, I am me," Go Che proudly declared, not willing to borrow his father's name. "If you have such a powerful father, how did you end up being captured here?" Yang Kai was also shocked. Go Che's expression became awkward as he glared at Yang Kai fiercely before sighing heavily, capsizing at such an easy task, there's no need to mention it. "Once I leave here, I'll definitely gather my people and raze this place to the ground." "I hope your wishes come true," Yang Kai casually said before asking, "How much do you know about this place?" "Not much." Go Che shook his head, no longer rejecting Yang Kai as much as before. He probably also felt that the enemy of an enemy was a friend and intended to join forces with Yang Kai to see if they could find a way to survive. "All we know is that the people here call themselves the Sun Clan. They seem to have originally been a part of the human race, but because of their secret art and the divine tree, their physique has become somewhat different from that of the human race, so they decided to call themselves a new race." "Divine tree?" Yang Kai frowned, vaguely remembering that when he had just woken up, one of the Sun Clan's clansmen had brought him to the main hall and mentioned something about a divine tree, saying they would turn him into nutrients for it. It's the Sun Clan's foundation. Didn't you see a somewhat different tree when you came here? The reason why the yang attribute energy here is so rich is entirely because of that divine tree. If not for that, how could our demonic chi be suppressed? The demon race called the energy in their bodies demonic chi, which was the same reason why human cultivators called it yuan chi. Hearing him say this, Yang Kai slowly shook his head. He really hadn't seen any divine tree. Probably because he and Enling had entered this mysterious small world from a different entrance. That divine tree is very strange. It can produce yang attribute energy on its own, but it's said that in recent years, the divine tree has had some kind of accident, causing it to become somewhat unstable. In order to maintain the divine tree's health and stability, the Sun Clan began to capture people from the outside and bring them in. The only entrance to this place is in my demon land. So, those who are captured are all from my clan. You two are quite strange. How did you end up being captured? There's more than one entrance here, we just accidentally broke in, Yang Kai explained casually. Oh, no wonder. Go Che nodded lightly before continuing. That unusual energy fluctuation just now, presumably you also felt it. That was the divine tree having some kind of problem. Every time this happens, the Sun Clan will capture a few people and turn their blood and flesh essence into nutrients for the divine tree in order to appease it. Then the people who were captured, dead. Go Che sneered, and it won't be long before it's our turn. As you can see, there aren't many people from my clan left here. Yang Kai's complexion changed slightly. There were only about a dozen people left in the cells on either side of him, and there weren't many people in the other cells either. Every time something happened to the divine tree, they would have to sacrifice a few people as a blood sacrifice, so it wouldn't be long before everyone here died. The Sun Clan here always captured people from the demon race from the demon land, so after a long time, it would definitely attract attention and vigilance. Presumably, the demon land would also be on guard, making it impossible for them to succeed. The fruit you ate a few days ago came from their divine tree, Go Che frowned. Seeing you eat it with such relish, and the aura on your body is so disgusting, you should be cultivating a yang attribute secret art, right? Yang Kai nodded lightly. Then you can live a carefree life. Before everyone here is killed, they won't touch you. That divine tree likes people like you the most as nutrients, so they'll save you for the final moment. Go Che said, a gloating look on his face, sneering meaningfully, causing Enling to shiver slightly. Many thanks for telling me. Yang Kai cupped his fists. Go Che grinned wickedly as he stared at Enling meaningfully. Little brat, if I were you, I would take advantage of this moment to enjoy myself. With such a beautiful woman here, you don't seem to have any problems with her, right? You can't be like this, you'll only disappoint her. As soon as this sentence came out, the remaining demon race people burst into laughter. Yang Kai's face went black, suddenly feeling this guy was a bit hateful. Enling tightened her clothes even more as she glared at Go Che hatefully before hiding behind Yang Kai. After talking with Go Che that day, Yang Kai had learned a little about the current situation and was somewhat mentally prepared. After tasting the delicious wine, Go Che also became somewhat shameless. Every time the Sun Clan people came to deliver food, he would always take 2 jugs of wine from Yang Kai. Yang Kai didn't mind and even shared the food with him. After more than 10 days of getting along, Go Che was no longer as arrogant as before. Although he hadn't reached the point of calling Yang Kai a brother yet, his attitude had become much better. However, what made Yang Kai speechless was that this rascal would always try to instigate him to take care of Enling. Every time this happened, Enling would blush and stare at Yang Kai with a weak expression. Being imprisoned here, they were constantly on edge, never knowing when they would lose their lives. This group of unscrupulous demon race people naturally wanted to have some fun. Over the past 10 days, Yang Kai had felt 2 unstable yang attribute energy fluctuations, most likely caused by the divine tree. Without exception, both times, a member of the demon race was captured and never returned. As the days passed, the number of demon race prisoners in the prison grew fewer and fewer, causing everyone's mood to gradually become heavy. The day of their deaths was not far away. Everyone was aware of this problem. The atmosphere was very dignified, only Yang Kai and Go Che seemed indifferent, one seemingly not worried at all while the other seemed to have completely disregarded life and death. During his free time, young Kai had been cultivating, not letting go of any opportunity to improve his strength. He knew that the day he was captured would be the day he had to give it his all. In this mysterious small world, whether he could survive or not depended on a little bit of accumulation and hard work. Young Kai didn't put anyone below the saint realm in his eyes, so if he was provoked, he would release his soul-devouring insects and cause this entire mysterious small world to become a living hell. Presumably, the Sun Clan's elders wouldn't be able to accept such consequences and would use this as a bargaining chip to negotiate with their masters. So, young Kai didn't show any panic. This was his trump card, one he wasn't prepared to reveal until the last moment. A month passed, 2 months passed, basically every 5 days someone would be captured, and as time passed, young Kai felt that the frequency of the divine tree's instability seemed to be increasing. There were only a few people left in the dungeon. In addition to young Kai and An Ling there was only Go Che and the 2 remaining people in his cell. Next time, it would be their turn. This feeling of their lives hanging by a thread made everyone panic, even Go Che somewhat unable to remain calm. One day, while drinking with young Kai, Go Che suddenly asked, "Friend, I can see that you're a man. If death really comes your way, won't you resist?" "Do you think I have a chance to resist?" Young Kai grinned meaningfully. "They didn't imprison your Yuan Qi, so your chances are better than mine. If that's the case, I certainly won't just sit still and wait for death." "Good, when the time comes, Father will help you. If you can really escape, please go to my father and tell him about the situation here so he can avenge me." Saying so, Go Che's expression became fierce. "Let them know that the people of the demon race are not to be trifled with." Young Kai glanced at him thoughtfully, faintly feeling that this rascal should still be hiding some means so he wouldn't be so powerless to resist when he was captured. However, this rascal's means should be limited. From the tone of his voice, it was clear he didn't think he had any hope of escaping. With his help, perhaps there really is a chance. Young Kai's brow furrowed. Just as he was speaking though, a chaotic fluctuation appeared in the air. Young Kai, Go Che, and An Ling's eyes suddenly flashed with surprise as they glanced at each other. "It's here." Go Che took a deep breath and quickly said. The divine tree had once again become unstable. At this moment, besides them, there was only one person from the demon race left in the dungeon, so this time it was likely they wouldn't be able to escape. Asterisk deng 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 deng. Asterisk the sound of hurried footsteps came from the outside, accompanied by a light creaking sound as several Sun Clan members entered from the outside, their expressions cold and gloomy. Chapter 766. The one leading this group was the master who had previously lifted the seal on young Kai, his expression gloomy and helpless. After entering, he waved his hand and several of his clansmen immediately opened the cell doors on both sides. "Little brat, it's time for you to die," the man coldly declared. "You've enjoyed so much to eat and drink for so long, now I want to see just how much of a role you can play." Saying so, he once again sealed young Kai's Yuan Qi and shouted to his clansmen, "Take them all away." Go Che and his clansmen immediately cursed out loud, but were met with a flurry of punches and kicks before they were taken out of the cell. Young Kai and An Ling didn't resist, so they were spared such a fate. Walking down the corridor of the dungeon, Go Che didn't seem to be willing to cooperate, constantly stopping here and there, resulting in him being whipped quite a few times. By the time they left the cell, Go Che was covered in blood from head to toe, but his backbone was firm and he didn't utter a single word, instead spitting out all kinds of obscenities that irritated the ears of those who heard him. The Sun Clan master sneered, "Curse all you want, you won't have a chance to do so later. I heard you're the son of some demon general. I think your father is nothing more than that. His own son is about to die yet he doesn't even know how to come and save him. If you have the guts, let me go, I'll go back and call for reinforcements so my father can wipe you all out." Go Che clamored. "Idiot." The man spat disdainfully. As Go Che spoke, he constantly winked at young Kai, seemingly wanting to take action. Young Kai quickly responded, motioning him to remain calm. This was the time when the master was most vigilant. Even if young Kai was at his peak, he couldn't guarantee he could successfully escape, let alone now that Yuan Qi and his knowledge sea had been tampered with. Yang Kai had to wait for an opportunity, find the best time to release his soul-devouring insects and control a large number of Sun Clan clansmen. Seeing this, Go Che no longer said anything and instead stared at Yang Kai suspiciously, wondering what he was planning to do. The more he was escorted forward, the more Yang Kai felt. The stronger the Yang attribute energy fluctuations became. The more he felt, the more uneasy he became. They seemed to be very anxious, and the speed of their feet was also extremely fast. Not long after, they came to an open field. There was nothing in the radius of a few thousand feet here, except for a giant golden tree that was 1,000 feet tall and had a lush canopy that took root here. Yang Kai could feel all the Yang energy. They all came from this giant tree. It was like a protective umbrella, its huge canopy spreading out and radiating energy into the distance, forming a semicircle visible to the naked eye that covered the Sun Clan's residence. As soon as he arrived here, the Yuan Qi in Yang Kai's body showed signs of restlessness. His flesh and blood also began to wriggle, and many of the restrictions placed on his body were destroyed. Yang Kai's eyes lit up in astonishment. Yang Kai hadn't expected such a strange tree to exist in this world. This should be the divine tree that the Sun Clan spoke of, the foundation of their clan. Because of the cultivation method, as long as they had this divine tree, their strength would increase rapidly. They didn't need to be like Yang Kai. They needed to search everywhere for Yang attribute precious treasures and places where world energy gathered. This was simply the paradise that Yang Kai had always dreamed of. Looking up, Yang Kai could see the giant divine tree. Vaguely, there were some fruits hanging upside down, the kind that Yang Kai had eaten before. There were quite a few of them, some of which seemed to be ripe, some of which were still in their tender state. Not far from the roots of the divine tree, the Sun Clan's elders were all waiting. When they noticed the arrival of Yang Kai's group, they all turned to look at him, their eyes filled with expectation when they saw Yang Kai. The divine tree also seemed to be giving off some unusual fluctuations, actually conveying a kind of desperate message. Visible to the naked eye, pure Yang attribute energy transformed into ropes that stretched out from the divine tree and wrapped around Yang Kai's body. Seeing this scene, everyone's spirits rose. The leader smiled and stroked his beard, nodding. It seems that the divine tree likes this human very much. We're saved. With this human, the divine tree should be able to remain stable for a while, giving us plenty of time to find new nutrient. Being able to become nutrients for the divine tree is your honor. The master who had escorted Yang Kai and the others here sneered. I don't think it's an honor, Yang Kai snorted, but didn't try to break free from the divine tree's energy chains. Not only did these energy chains not restrict his movements, but they also made him feel very comfortable. Continuing forward, not far in front of them, the ground was littered with bones and dark red blood. These bones were obviously the remains of the demon race members who had been dragged here as a blood sacrifice. As far as the eye could see, it was like a sea of bones. It was a ghastly sight, truly a bit horrifying. And Ling Er's pretty face paled, thinking that she would soon become like this, her heart filled with panic. Catcher. The group continued forward and stepped on these bones, breaking them and emitting a series of bone-chilling sounds. Go Che's eyes were filled with anger as he gasped for breath, his eyes gradually turning red as an aura of resentment slowly spread from his body. These bones and dried blood were all left behind by his clansmen, so Go Che was naturally angry. As they approached the divine tree, Yang Kai's expression gradually became strange. He seemed to be able to sense some indescribable information from the divine tree, and for a time, he couldn't help immersing himself in it. A moment later, the group was escorted to the divine tree's roots. The Sun Clan didn't seem to intend to waste any time and directly began the blood sacrifice to appease the divine tree. The leader stared at Go Che with scorching eyes and coldly said, "Let's start with him." Immediately, someone stepped forward and pressed Go Che to the ground. "Little brat, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?" Go Che suddenly shouted angrily at Yang Kai, his body suddenly swelling as his physique filled with explosive power, instantly shattering the seal placed on his body. Without hesitation, Go Che stretched out his claw-like hand towards the nearest Sun Clan clansman and thrust it straight towards his heart, intending to kill him in one blow. All the Sun Clan clansmen's expression didn't change as they all stared at Go Che like he was a clown. The old leader simply waved his hand and Go Che's movements stiffened. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move. Cold sweat gradually dripped down his forehead as Go Che's red eyes flashed with unwillingness, but in the face of absolute power, he was powerless. "You seem to want to fight to the death." The leader chuckled. "How naive. Do you think I'll give you a chance? You old bastard." Go Che ground his teeth and cursed, the veins on his forehead bulging as he unwillingly circulated his yuan qi, but was still unable to escape from this predicament. His strength wasn't low, having reached the third-order transcendent realm, but in front of a Saint Realm Master, he still couldn't resist. What's more, this was the Divine Tree's foundation, so in front of the rich yang qi, his demonic qi had been suppressed to the lowest possible level. Even a Sun Clan clansman of the same level as him could easily deal with him. "Kill him," the leader coldly ordered, his face filled with impatience. The two Sun Clan clansmen who had been holding Go Che down before grinned fiercely and raised their hands, their yuan qi surging as they prepared to kill him. "Wait!" Seeing that Go Che's blood was about to be spilled, Yang Kai suddenly shouted. "Little brat, what do you want to do?" The leader stared at Yang Kai gloomily. "Do you want to die in his place?" As soon as this statement came out, Go Che's expression became a little strange. Yang Kai curled his lips disdainfully and said, "Sorry, my friendship with him isn't that deep, whether he lives or dies has nothing to do with me." "Then why did you say something to stop him?" "I just thought that I might have a way to resolve the current problem and appease your divine tree." Yang Kai smiled lightly. All the Sun Clan people's expressions changed, the leader's expression becoming even colder as he stared deeply towards Yang Kai. "Little brat, you're young and frivolous, I can understand if you want to show off, but if you dare play tricks on us, I'll make sure you taste a fate worse than death. Whether I'm bragging or not, just let me try." "You won't lose anything," Yang Kai said as his body shook. In the next moment, the yuan qi in his body surged. "You!" The master who had escorted him stared at him dumbfoundedly, seemingly not having expected him to be able to break his seal so easily. "Don't be so surprised, it's not that I have the ability to break your seal, it's the divine tree that help." Yang Kai chuckled, pointing to the energy wrapped around his body. "Strange." The man shook his head, a puzzled look on his face. "Then do you want to let me try?" "To be honest, if you want to kill me right now, I have no objection, at most I'll die, but if you let me try, you may find some unexpected surprises. If it really doesn't work, it won't be too late for you to act then, it's all up to you." Seeing him speak so calmly, as if he didn't know the meaning of death, the Sun Clan clansmen began to hesitate. The main reason was that the Divine Tree's actions this time had surprised them. There had never been a precedent of the Divine Tree wrapping its energy around someone before, not even the Sun Clan clansmen. As such, Yang Kai's words were somewhat credible. Perhaps, as he said, they would find some unexpected surprises. After discussing for a while, everyone turned their eyes to their leader. The old man hesitated for a moment, his eyes staring at Yang Kai with some distrust, but after a moment of silence, he nodded lightly and said, "This old master allows it, what do you want to do?" "Let's hear it first." "I can't say, just watch." Yang Kai chuckled, ignoring the Sun Clan clansmen's oppressive gazes and walked forward. "If you dare damage the divine tree in the slightest, I'll pull out your soul and torture you for all eternity." The leader threatened coldly. Yang Kai coldly snorted and didn't pay attention to him. Chapter 767. In front of everyone's eyes, Yang Kai walked up to the huge divine tree. Both Go Che and An Ling secretly broke out in cold sweat, not knowing what Yang Kai was planning. Standing at the base of the divine tree, Yang Kai's brow furrowed slightly as he slowly stretched out his hand and placed it on the thick trunk of the tree. In an instant, Yang Kai's body shook. The divine tree in front of him was simply a huge treasure trove. The divine tree contained a massive amount of Yang attribute energy that Yang Kai couldn't even fathom, and it was currently flowing through the veins in its trunk like a roaring river. Listening carefully, Yang Kai could even hear the sound of flowing water coming from it. Yang Kai's brow furrowed as he thought to himself, if he could take this huge amount of energy for himself, Just what kind of strength would he be able to grow to? But soon, Yang Kai secretly shook his head. After all, this was the Sun Clan's divine tree. In front of so many masters, it was impossible for him to absorb the divine tree's energy. If he really did so, he would become a corpse in the next moment. While Yang Kai was observing this, the divine senses of each of the Sun Clan's masters were locked onto him, as if the moment he made the slightest move, they would ruthlessly destroy him. However, Yang Kai acted quite tactfully and simply continued to investigate. After a long time, these people began to show impatient looks because the fluctuations coming from the divine tree were still chaotic and unstable, showing no signs of change. Yang Kai didn't waste any more time and once again shattered the seal in his knowledge sea. His soul avatar leapt out of his body and rushed into the divine tree's trunk. In a golden world, Yang Kai's soul avatar seemed to be swimming in a golden river. This river was composed entirely of Yang attribute energy, and following the source of this river, Yang Kai continued upwards. A short time later, Yang Kai arrived at a mysterious place. This place should be somewhere inside the divine tree. Strictly speaking, it could be considered the heart of the tree. In front of him, there was a unique mass of energy quietly floating around the golden river. This mass of energy also exuded a hot aura. However, there were some subtle differences between this and the surrounding river. At this moment, a rhythmic pulse was being emitted from this ball of energy, making it look like a beating heart. Looking at it, Yang Kai was shocked. Sure enough, he thought to himself. When Yang Kai came here and saw the energy of the tree of God coiling around his body, he sensed it. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he was shocked. This immediately confirmed the guess in his heart. At the same time, he completely understood why the tree of God was rioting and unstable. The Sun Clan didn't understand this and could only use blood sacrifices to provide nutrients to the divine tree. With a light snort, Yang Kai stared ahead without blinking. That ball of energy was still moving. He revealed a thirsty message to Yang Kai. This mass of energy was currently in a chaotic state, but Yang Kai believed that if it was given enough time and nutrients, it would become a mass of conscious energy. In the boundless universe, there were all kinds of strange life forms. The jade true spirit Yang Kai had encountered before was a kind of life form, the bone race he saw in Ice Sect was also a kind of life form, and this divine tree was also a kind of life form. However, looking at its current appearance, it seemed to be transforming into a different kind of life form. From an unconscious state to a conscious one. This mass of energy at the heart of the tree of God was the place where its consciousness converged. Once this evolution was successful, this mass of energy would become the place where the divine tree's soul converged, becoming its soul avatar. Yang Kai was deeply shocked, never having thought that a giant tree could reach this point today. The instability and rioting of the divine tree was not because it was in some kind of condition, nor was it because it was nearing the end of its life, but because this kind of evolution required a lot of energy and nutrients. It was rooted here and couldn't absorb too much nutrients, so whenever it needed something, it would unconsciously riot, so when someone was sacrificed here, the divine tree would calm down for a while. After eating and drinking enough, it would naturally calm down. However, this kind of method only treated the symptoms, not the root cause, and when it once again craved something, the Sun Clan's people would be helpless. The amount of energy required to evolve was simply too great, and judging from the frequency of its rioting, Yang Kai secretly felt that it wouldn't be long before the divine tree's evolution succeeded. Thinking about this, Yang Kai quickly figured out the situation in front of him, but he didn't know how much the Sun Clan knew about this. Logically speaking, as long as they sent their soul avatars into this place to investigate, they should be able to figure out the situation. But judging from the uneasiness they felt towards the divine tree's rioting, it seemed they didn't know the reason for it. Yang Kai was a little confused and couldn't help feeling puzzled. I need to ask them about this carefully. Thinking so, Yang Kai quickly withdrew his soul avatar and returned to his body. As soon as he opened his eyes, the angry shouts of the Sun Clan masters rang out in his ears. They seemed to have become impatient and were about to sacrifice Go Che and his companions. What's the hurry? Yang Kai glanced over at them and said lightly, I've already made some progress, just wait a little longer. The Sun Clan leader glared at Yang Kai and coldly declared, I'll give you half a cup of tea's time, If you still can't stabilize the divine tree, all of you will die here today. Half a cup of tea's time. Yang Kai chuckled, that should be enough. Saying so, his figure leapt up into the air and disappeared into the dense foliage, disappearing from everyone's sight. The Sun Clan masters weren't worried though. Although they couldn't see Yang Kai, with their divine senses locked onto him, they weren't worried about Yang Kai playing any tricks. Atop a huge tree trunk, Yang Kai estimated the distance and felt that he should be in the same place as the mass of energy his soul avatar had seen before. Stretching out his finger, Yang Kai opened a crack in the tree trunk. Immediately, Yang Kai released a drop of yang liquid from his fingertip and dripped it into this crack. The yang liquid directly seeped into it and disappeared. Waiting quietly, Yang Kai's heart was in turmoil and he didn't have much confidence. What he was doing now was just to give it a try. He wasn't sure if it would work. He still remembered that when he was still very weak, he had used his yang liquid to cultivate yang attribute spirit grasses and spirit trees, so he knew that his yang liquid had a very significant effect on promoting the growth of such things. Spirit grasses and spirit trees that had been growing for several years only needed 1 or 2 drops of yang liquid to fully mature in half a month. Now, this divine tree needed energy to evolve. Giving it a drop of yang liquid was undoubtedly the best choice. Moreover, Yang Kai's drop of yang liquid was very different from before. The difference in energy contained within it was tens of millions of times greater. Perhaps it could meet the divine tree's requirement. It was only a possibility, but if it didn't succeed, Yang Kai would have no choice but to give it a try. Waiting nervously, Yang Kai's heart was in his throat, not because he was afraid of fighting with the Sun Clan, but because he was full of anticipation. He was looking forward to the effect his yang liquid would have on the divine tree. He really wanted to see what this divine tree would look like when it evolved into a sentient form. Suddenly, the divine tree's already unstable fluctuations became even more chaotic and violent, as if it had been stimulated by something, its yang attribute energy raging. A scorching hot wind swept up from the ground. "Little brat, what did you do?" One of the Sun Clan clansmen who had been waiting down below immediately roared and flew up to deal with Yang Kai. "Wait." The Sun Clan leader waved his hand to stop him, his brow furrowed as he carefully probed the situation. "Leader, that little brat must have done something to the divine tree, please let me kill him." "I told you to wait." The leader swept a dignified glance over him, causing the man to immediately shut up. "On the tree trunk." Yang Kai heard the other party's words. However, he didn't panic at all and instead showed a happy expression. The divine tree was really thirsty for yang liquid. Its riot wasn't because it was uncomfortable, but because it had tasted something so delicious and was unconsciously asking for more. The crack on the tree trunk that Yang Kai had made before had actually opened up on its own. The divine tree seemed to think that it could obtain more benefits by doing this. Its consciousness was now in a state of chaos and ignorance, like a growing fetus. It was somewhat sensitive to the outside world, but it couldn't distinguish too many details. The opening of the crack on its own was a direct manifestation of its consciousness. Yang Kai grinned and dripped a drop of yang liquid from his fingertip into the divine tree's trunk. A moment later, the divine tree's violent aura suddenly calmed down. At this moment, the faces of the Sun Clan clansmen all showed strange expressions. The leader's expression also changed, a cold light flashing across his eyes. As time passed, the divine tree's aura gradually stabilized, as if it was being smoothed out by an invisible hand. Everyone waited at the bottom for a while before they saw Kai Yang jump down with a pale face. After landing, Yang Kai sat down cross-legged without saying a word and began circulating his secret art. No one dared to disturb him, even the Sun Clan clansmen held their breaths and waited quietly, wondering what kind of method he had used to calm the divine tree's riot. Go Che and Ling glanced at each other and secretly breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that this time they had luckily escaped disaster. After a long time, Yang Kai slowly opened his eyes. Although his complexion was a little ruddy, anyone could see that he was quite weak at the moment, and the yuan qi in his body seemed to have been completely exhausted. His expression was also quite gloomy, obviously not in a good mood. Yang Kai was indeed in a bad mood. This time, in order to provide nutrients to the divine tree, He had consumed a total of 20 drops of young liquid before finally stabilizing it. It was a big loss. Little brat, what method did you use? The Sun Clan leader quickly asked, how did you manage to calm the divine tree? Do you think I'll tell you? Young Kai sneered. Little brat, you don't know what's good for you. If you don't speak, we'll let you taste all the torture in this world. Someone immediately threatened. Young Kai slowly shook his head, not showing any fear. It doesn't matter, this time's pacification was just a stopgap measure. If you don't want to completely solve the divine tree's problem, you can try to kill me. I promise you, even if I lose a single hair, the next time something happens to the divine tree, I will absolutely stand by and watch. Chapter 768. Young Kai's fearless appearance made the Sun Clan's men feel somewhat troubled. The Sun Clan leader let out a strange laugh, whether it was out of ridicule or admiration, muttering, little brat, your courage isn't small. Do you think we won't dare attack you? You only have one life, so you'd best cooperate. Young Kai stared at him indifferently, not saying a word, making it clear that he wouldn't reveal the truth even if he was beaten to death. Now, if he wanted to take the initiative, he could only remain silent. Once the Sun Clan found out what he had done, they would likely treat him as a long-term nutrient for the divine tree, forcing him to constantly produce young liquid and feed it to it. This was not what Young Kai wanted to see. However, listening to their tone, Young Kai faintly felt that they really didn't know the divine tree was evolving. Frowning for a moment, a thought flashed through his mind and he suddenly understood. The reason he could detect this was because his soul avatar had entered the tree trunk and could easily see what was happening. Their soul avatars obviously didn't have this ability. Inside the tree trunk, rich and hot yang attribute energy flowed, so once their soul avatars entered it, they would likely be incinerated to death. They didn't have conflagrated knowledge seas, so they could ignore this kind of heat. Considering all this, Young Kai's heart calmed down and he became more and more confident. As long as they didn't know the inside story, he could completely seize the initiative. The Sun Clan leader stared deeply at Young Kai, his brow furrowed as his expression fluctuated, but after a while, he chuckled and nodded, if you don't want to say, then don't. Even if you don't say anything, I'll still have a chance to figure it out. This was their territory and his cultivation was much higher than Young Kai's, so naturally he felt that Young Kai wouldn't be able to hide it for long. Young Kai shrugged his shoulders, not denying this. Since you have the ability to appease the divine tree, you have some value to us, so we won't kill you today. But I warn you. Don't play any tricks or you'll have to bear the consequences. Young Kai chuckled, don't worry, I know my limits. As long as you don't hurt me and my companions, I will cooperate. This kid is interesting. The leader laughed strangely. Young Kai's flexible attitude was an eye-opener for him. But before that, I have a few requests that I need to tell you. Don't push your luck. You dare to make demands of us? You don't have the qualifications. Don't you know where you stand? The leader coldly snorted, his expression becoming gloomy. I'm not making this request for myself. This is for the sake of your divine tree. If you want your divine tree to recover as soon as possible, it's best that you listen to me. It's fine if you don't listen, it's up to you. The Sun Clan's people all frowned as they stared at him with some distrust. Speak. The leader said with a sullen expression. First, starting today, I want all Sun Clan members to stop absorbing yang attribute energy from the divine tree. If he wanted to cultivate, stay far away. Why? I can only say that this has something to do with the divine tree's rebellion, Young Kai said perfunctorily. The divine tree needed nutrients to evolve, so he had to use his yang liquid to help it evolve. Young Kai didn't want the divine tree's energy to be divided up by the Sun Clan again, as doing so would only worsen his own consumption. What kind of joke is this? You think you can make my entire clan stop cultivating with just a few words? A Sun Clan master shouted. That's up to you to decide, I don't care, I'm just making a suggestion. How long must we stop? The Sun Clan leader asked. Young Kai frowned and asked, how long ago did your divine tree start acting up? The leader replied, about 3 years ago. At first, it wasn't very obvious, but recently it has become more and more frequent. Yang Kai nodded lightly. In other words, the divine tree's evolution had begun 3 years ago, so his inference was correct. As long as the conditions were met, it wouldn't take long for the divine tree to complete its evolution. At that time, it would develop its own consciousness and become a higher-level life form. If that's the case, then you only need to endure for a year at most, maybe half a year, maybe even less. Acceptable. The leader nodded and agreed to Yang Kai's request. With him saying so, even if the other Sun Clan masters were somewhat unwilling, they couldn't refute. At worst, they would just have to endure for a year. Second, I need something to supplement my Yuan Qi, preferably the divine tree's fruits, the more the better, Yang Kai said lightly. As soon as this statement came out, all the Sun Clan members wore strange expressions. The leader chuckled and said, "The more the better. Do you think the divine tree's fruits are inexhaustible? Each of the fruits here has been growing for hundreds of years, even we don't have the opportunity to consume them easily. Who do you think you are, daring to ask for such a treasure? Aren't there a lot of fruits on the tree?" Yang Kai's face also sank. These people were really stingy. There were a lot of ripe fruits hanging from the divine tree, at least a few dozen of them, each of which emitted a strong fragrance, causing Yang Kai to feel extremely envious. These are the treasures my clan has accumulated over thousands of years. How can we allow outsiders to consume them? The leader looked reluctant. Even if you don't have such fruits, Yang attribute spirit grasses and spirit medicines are fine. You should have enough, right? Yang Kai said impatiently. The wool comes from the sheep's back. He was providing the yang liquid for the divine tree's evolution, so naturally the Sun Clan would have to supplement his consumption. As you can see, I need to consume all my Yuan Qi to appease the divine tree. If I don't replenish it, how can I recover? The leader heard this and could only nod. Good, we'll do as you say. We'll provide you with something to supplement your Yuan Qi. You don't need to worry about that. Thirdly, little brat, we don't have the patience to discuss conditions with you. The leader looked displeased and directly interrupted Yang Kai. Yang Kai chuckled meaningfully. I just wanted to say, since you need me, shouldn't you provide me with a better environment? I can't escape from here. What's the point of keeping me locked up in this dungeon? Good. There's also my female companion, Ian. I've been getting along quite well with those 2 friends from the demon race. If it's convenient, arrange for them to be with me. Go Che couldn't help glancing over at Yang Kai in surprise, his expression changing slightly, seemingly a little grateful. I agree. The leader was already impatient to the extreme, his expression slightly ferocious. Your conditions. I'll satisfy you. But if you don't, you know what will happen to you. Very well, Yang Kai nodded lightly, his face filled with a bright smile. Take them away, arrange for them according to his requirement. The leader waved his hand and ordered. The master who had escorted Yang Kai and the others here immediately stepped forward and escorted them away. After they left, one of the Sun Clan's elders wore a gloomy expression. That little brat is simply rude, daring to make so many demands. Why did you agree to his demands, leader? What's wrong with agreeing? In any case, it's just a small matter. I'd like to see how he appeases the divine tree next time. Send someone to monitor them. Especially that young human. Let's see what he's up to during this time. Yes. Inside a palace, Yang Kai's group of 4 was led here. After arranging their accommodations, the Sun Clan man who had led Yang Kai and the others here left. However, whether it was Yang Kai or Go Che, both of them could feel that there were many powerful masters monitoring them from the periphery of this palace, their divine senses seeping in. Obviously, they wouldn't give them a chance to escape. Changing to a more comfortable environment. Escaping from the jaws of death again, the group of 4 felt some lingering fear. In particular, Go Che and the unknown man from the demon race couldn't understand why Yang Kai would take such good care of them. Inside a private room, the 4 people gathered together, Go Che looking at Yang Kai with a somewhat complicated expression, hesitating several times before finally asking the question in his heart. Yang Kai chuckled. It's nothing special, it's just that now that we've all fallen into this predicament, it's not a big deal. Isn't brother Go Che thinking too much? Go Che's expression became awkward as he scratched his cheek awkwardly, suddenly saying in a serious tone, no matter what, this time I, Go Che, owe you my life. I will remember this kindness. If we can leave this place, I will definitely repay it. This time, if it weren't for Yang Kai's unexpected actions, he would have already been sacrificed to the Sun Clan. Brother Go Che is too serious. Yang Kai waved his hand lightly. Whether or not we can leave this place is another matter altogether. If things go wrong, we may still die here. When that time comes, I'll fight them. I've already experienced that. Ian, this palace is a bit big, you can find a room to stay in. For the time being, no one will be in any danger. I need to quickly restore myself. Then brother, I won't disturb you any longer. Have a good rest. Go Che said before quickly leading his clansmen away. And Ling Er didn't leave, just staring at Yang Kai thoughtfully with her pair of beautiful eyes. What else do you want? Yang Kai asked. You lied. And Ling Er frowned. I can feel that you didn't save Go Che out of kindness. You must be plotting something. If you know too much, it's easy to be silenced by others. Yang Kai grinned wickedly. I'm not afraid of you, you're just talking nonsense. And Ling Er spat disdainfully, seemingly having already seen through Yang Kai, hesitating for a moment before asking, what exactly do you want from him? What can he possibly give you? It's nothing, Yang Kai smiled. What I want is for him to be grateful. What good is that for you? Here, his gratitude can't save you. It really can't save me here, but what about outside? Yang Kai stared at her meaningfully. Outside. And Ling Er's brow furrowed, seemingly puzzled. Idiot. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. They say women have big breasts but no brains. It seems that's true. Aye. And Ling Er blushed, quietly lowering her head to look at her towering peaks, grinding her teeth as she asked, where are they big? I don't think they're small, they've developed quite well, Yang Kai said with a lewd expression. Shameless bastard. And Ling Er shouted angrily, her neck flushed red. Chapter 769. Inside the room, after listening to Yang Kai's explanation, and Ling Er finally understood what Yang Kai was planning. If his guess was correct, after leaving this mysterious small world, they would arrive at the Demon Land. The Demon Land was the territory of the demon race. Since ancient times, humans and demons had never coexisted. In Tongxian realm, except for the neutral zones, once creatures of different races met, they would inevitably fight. If Yang Kai, a human, suddenly appeared in the Demon Land, he would definitely be hunted down by the demon race. At that time, even if he had extraordinary skills, he would not be able to escape. But with Go Che, things were different. This guy's father was the demon general Go Cheong, a powerful master, so as long as he could shelter Yang Kai and Ling Er, they wouldn't have to worry about such matters. That was why Yang Kai had decided to help him in order to gain his gratitude. Hearing this, Ling Er stared at Yang Kai with a contemptuous look. So you're trying to extort me for my kindness? Why do you have so many tricks up your sleeve? Yang Kai snorted. I'm just thinking further ahead than you. Of course, all of this is based on the premise that we can leave this place. If we can't leave, even if we become sworn brothers with that rascal Go Che, it won't help us. Can we leave? And Ling Er pursed her red lips, her brow furrowed uneasily. I don't know, everything depends on effort. Yang Kai also shook his head helplessly. Right now, he didn't dare make any guarantees and could only say he would do his best to create a way out. I wonder how the Holy Land is doing, and Ling Er sighed faintly. Saintess Nan had suddenly become like this, and the old Holy Master had likely fallen. It was likely that the entire Holy Land was in chaos right now. I don't know what's happening to your Holy Land, but I think your 3 Saintess sisters are most likely dead. Ah! And Ling Er's beautiful face went pale as she exclaimed. Thinking about it carefully, she suddenly felt that what Yang Kai said was indeed possible. Because they cultivated the same cultivation method, Saintess Nan could easily find the location of the other saintesses, and Ling Er had managed to escape the calamity on the archipelago. However, her 3 sisters might not have such good luck. There was no Saint Realm Master in the Saintess patrol team, nor was there anyone capable of resisting the previous generation's Saintess, who was only a second-order saint. It was very likely that before Saintess Nan pursued Ling Er, she had already killed one or more of those 3. Yang Kai's words made An Ling Er's joy from escaping from the jaws of death instantly sink to the bottom of the valley. Her pretty face faintly paled. Just pretend I didn't say anything. The situation may not be so bad. Yang Kai secretly regretted his words. He had already thought of these things. He had just casually mentioned it, but who would have thought that it would make An Ling Er so sad? It's all your fault. I was in a good mood. An Ling Er glared at Yang Kai with reddened eyes. She covered her face and ran out. Yang Kai could only shake his head helplessly, feeling that trouble often came from careless talk. The Sun Clan people were relatively trustworthy. Not long after Yang Kai and the others settled down, they sent him a large number of pills. Thus, he sent over a large number of spirit pills and medicines, all of which were of the Yang attribute. This place was rich in Yang attribute energy, so naturally it was very suitable for growing herbs of this attribute. The Sun Clan probably had someone skilled in alchemy, so these herbs were all refined into pills. There were a total of 10 bottles, each containing 10 pills, all of them spirit grade low rank. Not high grade, but not too bad either. 10 bottles of spirit grade low rank pills. It took Yang Kai less than half an hour to swallow all of them. The Yang liquid he had consumed was basically replenished. However, Yang Kai was still not satisfied and was preparing to take advantage of this opportunity. He wanted to properly extort the Sun Clan. After all, he would need to replenish the Divine Tree's Yang liquid many times in the future, so how could a trivial 10 bottles of pills satisfy him? After 3 days of peace, Yang Kai once again requested pills from the Sun Clan, causing the eyes of the Sun Clan person in charge to almost pop out of their sockets. 10 bottles contained a total of 100 pills, enough for any one of their clansmen to consume for several months, but Yang Kai had consumed all of them in just 3 days. However, under their surveillance, they also knew that Yang Kai had been meditating in his room and had not taken even half a step out. He also didn't have a universe bag storage artifact on him, so naturally it was impossible for him to hide these pills. After a series of dissatisfied scoldings, the Sun Clan person finally brought another 10 bottles of pills for Yang Kai and advised him to use them sparingly. Even for their Sun Clan, refining these pills was not easy. Yang Kai nodded in agreement, but secretly snorted disdainfully, still swallowing these pills like they were beans. Spirit-grade low-rank pills, if he wanted to refine them now, he could easily refine 10 bottles in less than 2 days. It could only be said that the standard of the Sun Clan's alchemists was simply too low. Time passed day by day, and everyone in the Sun Clan thought that after this time's appeasement, the Divine Tree would remain stable for a while, but after 5 days, the Divine Tree once again began to emit unstable energy fluctuations. When he noticed this, Yang Kai had already made preparations. Sure enough, a moment later, someone came and led him to the Divine Tree. This time, An Ling Er and the others didn't follow and instead remained in the palace. Under the Divine Tree, the Sun Clan's masters, led by their leader, were all waiting. After seeing Yang Kai appear, all of them locked their divine senses onto him, seemingly wanting to take this opportunity to figure out what kind of trick Yang Kai had used to appease the Divine Tree. Yang Kai's expression remained indifferent, not showing the slightest hint of nervousness. Even if they probed his methods, there wouldn't be any problems because in this world, besides him, there was likely no one else capable of such a feat as such. He wasn't worried at all. Arriving here, Yang Kai didn't waste any time and directly jumped onto the Divine Tree's trunk, still searching for the crack he had previously opened, condensing a drop of Yang liquid at his fingertips and dripping it down. Each drop of Yang liquid contained Yang Kai's Yuan Qi, and with his current cultivation and Meridian's toughness, the amount of energy contained in this Yang liquid was already enormous. Even so, when the drop of Yang liquid seeped into the Divine Tree, it disappeared and was completely absorbed by the Divine Tree. A burst of rapid fluctuations began to spread from the Divine Tree, more unstable than before, obviously in desperate need of more energy. Yang Kai didn't become anxious and continued to drip Yang liquid into the Divine Tree 1 drop at a time to appease its unconscious fluctuations. The Sun Clan's masters were watching closely from below, but they still couldn't figure out what was going on and couldn't help frowning. Although they could feel a huge amount of energy leaking out, it would quickly disappear, but they still couldn't figure out what was going on. One after another, all of them frowned. They wanted to go up and take a closer look, but were afraid that Yang Kai would turn hostile, so they hesitated. About half an hour later, the divine tree's aura stabilized. Yang Kai's soul avatar flew into the divine tree and inspected it, quickly discovering that this time the mysterious energy was somewhat different from the last time. It seemed to have become more solid. Nodding to himself, Yang Kai felt that it wouldn't be long before this energy mass gained its own consciousness. When Yang Kai jumped down again, the Sun Clan's masters found that he was the same as last time, his face pale and the Yuan Qi in his body completely consumed. Looking at each other, all of them were very satisfied. Regardless of what method Yang Kai had used to appease the divine tree, from his performance, it was clear he had done his best, which was what the Sun Clan wanted to see. After waiting for him to recover for a moment, everyone came forward. The Sun Clan's leader said, "Little brat, I heard you consume pills very quickly. Do you take my Sun Clan for fools?" Yang Kai slowly opened his eyes, pursed his dry lips, and said weakly, "I consumed so many pills, and although I had some gains, in the end, the one who benefited was still your divine tree. Let me tell you this, of the energy I absorbed from those pills, 90% was fed back to the divine tree. I think you can also see this, all I obtained was a small benefit. Do you really want to bicker with me over such a small amount?" The Sun Clan's leader frowned. Although he felt that Yang Kai's words were somewhat untrustworthy, he couldn't refute them. "Since you've brought this up, I have to make a serious declaration to you. Provide me with a large number of pills, a large number, do you understand? Otherwise, the next time something happens to your divine tree, I can't guarantee I'll have enough Yuan Qi to deal with it." Everyone's face sank. Yang Kai's attitude being so arrogant made them feel a little uncomfortable. "If it's really for the divine tree, I can provide it to you. But your consumption is too fast. If this continues for too long, I'm afraid we won't be able to supply it," the Sun Clan's leader said calmly. "If you don't have pills, I'll refine them myself." Yang Kai took a step back. "You also understand alchemy?" The Sun Clan's leader looked at him with slight surprise. "That's none of your business." Yang Kai snorted. "Good, I'll have someone prepare it." The Sun Clan's leader nodded. "Right, why did the divine tree's rebellion come so quickly this time? Shouldn't you explain it to us?" "What do I need to explain? You don't think that after my pacification, the divine tree will stop rioting, do you?" "I don't think so, I just think the cycle should be longer." "Idiot." Yang Kai sneered, "The faster its frequency, the better. Once it reaches a certain level, it won't riot anymore. If possible, I hope to come here once a day to appease it. There's no need to wait for it to show any signs of trouble." "Once a day?" Everyone showed a surprised expression, their faces full of confusion. This request can be satisfied. Rest assured, as long as you wholeheartedly devote yourself to the divine tree and my Sun Clan, we will definitely not treat you unfairly, perhaps we will even give you many benefits. Since you cultivate a Yang attribute secret art, my Sun Clan has some martial skills that are very suitable for you. Seemingly feeling Yang Kai's sincerity, the Sun Clan's leader's expression became much more amiable, immediately promising him a great deal of benefits. Yang Kai was overjoyed on the surface, but in his heart, he was disdainful. From the way they treated him, it was obvious they only regarded him as a laborer. Even if they opened martial skills to him, they would only offer him some low-end stuff. Yang Kai really didn't care about these things. Chapter 770. Inside the small sealed world, Yang Kai's days were quite dull. Go Che and another from the demon race had nothing to do all day while Yuan Qi's divine sense had been sealed, making it impossible for him to cultivate, so he was bored to death. Although An Ling was the same, in the end, she was still a woman, so her temperament was much calmer and she spent most of her time in a daze, no one knowing what she was thinking. Compared to them, Yang Kai was extremely busy. The Sun Clan sent him a large number of spirit grasses and herbs. Yang Kai refined these herbs into pills while swallowing them into his abdomen to absorb their medicinal efficacies. Every day, he would go to the divine tree to provide it with a few drops of Yang liquid, making his days extremely fulfilling. The grade of the Sun Clan's herbs was very good, and using them to perform alchemy, Yang Kai was able to put all his previous insights into practice, allowing his alchemy skills to soar rapidly. The Sun Clan members were also constantly monitoring Yang Kai's movements, but they were still unable to completely figure out what kind of bizarre method Yang Kai had used to appease the divine tree. On top of that, from the time he insisted on visiting the divine tree every day, the divine tree no longer emitted unstable energy fluctuations like before. All the Sun Clan members were overjoyed, feeling that this human really had some use, and secretly rejoiced that they hadn't directly killed him. The only thing that made them dissatisfied was that Yang Kai was consuming too many herbs, like a bottomless pit that couldn't be filled no matter how hard they tried. If it weren't for them constantly monitoring Yang Kai's movements, they would have already asked him what was going on. Time flew by, and soon 3 or 4 months had passed. On this day, after Yang Kai finished providing the divine tree with Yang liquid, his soul avatar dove into the trunk as usual to examine it. Looking up, his eyes couldn't help lighting up. The primal chaos soul energy inside the trunk was pulsing vigorously at this moment, like a butterfly about to break out of its cocoon, full of vitality. Under the probing of Yang Kai's divine sense, it was also transmitting some subtle messages. It seemed like it wanted to communicate with Yang Kai, but didn't know how to express itself. Yang Kai's expression shook, knowing that the divine tree's evolution had reached the most critical juncture. At this rate, it wouldn't take more than 2 months before its consciousness was completely born. At that time, it would be a completely new life form. After quietly comforting it for a while, Yang Kai's soul avatar came out and weakly jumped down from the trunk. After resting for a while, he went straight to the Sun Clan master who was waiting. Yang Kai, from tomorrow onwards, I will live here. Here? The sun frown on His Highness's face was. Yes, there are some things that I'm very concerned about. I need to observe them for a while, so I won't be running around. If you live here, I'll be able to find out if anything happens to your divine tree. But why do I? God heavens gods. Yang Tree Spiritess the Sun Clan master stared at Yang Kai distrustfully. I'm very self-aware. As a prisoner, I won't ask for trouble. You think too much, Yang Kai chuckled. Boy, you're smart, but I'll have to report this matter to the leader first and see what he has to say, the Sun Clan master nodded. As soon as possible, I'll wait for news from you, Yang Kai said before walking straight towards the palace. Returning to the palace, Yang Kai explained his plan to Enling, causing her to suddenly look a little uneasy. If you leave, what will I do? Go Che and the others are still living here. Yang Kai couldn't help frowning as he fell into deep thought. Although Go Che didn't look bad, no one could guarantee that without Yang Kai's protection, he wouldn't act lustfully towards Enling. Even if Go Che had some self-awareness, there was still another member of the demon race. The members of the demon race were a group of violent and cruel people who acted based on their own preferences. Trying to reason with them was pointless. Then you can come with me, I'll tell them I need someone to take care of me. I don't think they'll embarrass me in this regard, Yang Kai thought for a moment and said. And Linga nodded quickly, her expression relaxing. The next day, the Sun Clan master came to the palace and informed Yang Kai that the leader had agreed to his request. Yang Kai took this opportunity to bring up the matter of Enling. The Sun Clan master pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement, no longer needing to report to the leader. After saying goodbye to Go Che and the others, Yang Kai took Enling and left the palace. Under the divine tree, Enling temporarily settled down. The Sun Clan didn't allow her to fly to the top of the tree like Yang Kai, only allowing her to stay under the divine tree. However, as long as she wasn't too far away from Yang Kai, Enling felt relieved. She also knew that the reason she was safe and sound right now was entirely because of Yang Kai's protection. If not for Yang Kai, she would have either become a blood sacrifice or become a plaything for the Sun Clan, neither of which was the outcome she wanted to see. Atop the divine tree, Yang Kai began to observe the reaction of the chaotic soul energy after injecting it with a few drops of Yang liquid. Just like yesterday, the divine tree still wanted to communicate with him, but was unable to express itself clearly. Yang Kai's soul avatar sent out waves of soothing energy, calming the divine tree's impatience and guiding it bit by bit. Miraculously, after such a long supply of Yang liquid, the divine tree had developed a very strong sense of dependence on Yang Kai, so after being comforted by him, Not only did it immediately calm down, it even showed a sense of comfort. As time passed, everything returned to normal. Every day, Yang Kai, in addition to communicating with the divine tree through his soul, spent most of his time accompanying Ling Er. In order to ensure that the divine tree could evolve as quickly as possible, Yang Kai didn't even dare to circulate his true Yang secret art, lest he absorb energy from it and delay its evolution process. No one noticed the divine tree's little by little changes, except for Yang Kai, who tried to communicate with it all day long. However, the chaotic soul energy seemed to have reached a limit and was about to undergo some unimaginable changes. More than a month after Yang Kai and Ling Er lived next to the divine tree, one day, when Yang Kai once again sent his soul avatar into the trunk, the divine tree's soul energy suddenly burst out with a joyful fluctuation, as if it had been waiting for Yang Kai's arrival for a long time. At the same time, Yang Kai clearly felt that the divine tree's soul energy in front of him had given birth to a small consciousness. A look of shock appeared on his face as Yang Kai carefully released his spiritual energy and slowly approached the divine tree heart. The moment his spiritual energy came into contact with the divine tree's soul energy, the divine tree suddenly burst out with a scorching aura. In an instant, Yang Kai's soul avatar was wrapped up in this aura. There seemed to be some unusual sounds in the depths of his soul, like a baby who had just learned to speak and was acting coquettishly in its parents' arms, not knowing what to do. Yang Kai suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Fortunately, his soul avatar contained the conflagrated spiritual energy, otherwise, being wrapped up in the divine tree's soul would have been enough to shatter anyone's soul. He hurriedly transmitted his thoughts, and the aura that wrapped around him hesitated for a moment before reluctantly retreating. Yang Kai laughed involuntarily, feeling that this divine tree's soul was no different from an ignorant baby, instinctively trying to get close to the person it thought it was close to. On top of that, at this moment, it shouldn't have completed its evolution and was still at the final juncture, only one step away. Perceiving its disappointment, Yang Kai quickly poured his divine sense into the divine tree's soul, instantly causing it to become lively again. 2 hours later, the divine tree's soul gradually calmed down and seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep, no longer emitting any spiritual energy fluctuations. Yang Kai gently exhaled and released his soul avatar, an unimaginable wave of fatigue washing over him. Dealing with such an unevolved life form was even more difficult than fighting a Saint Realm master. It didn't understand anything at all, and Yang Kai's emotions could completely affect its mood swings. In order to avoid any accidents that would alert the Sun Clan's people, Yang Kai had been coaxing it from beginning to end like he was coaxing a child. However, the current situation was somewhat beyond Yang Kai's expectations. The reason he had poured Yang liquid into the divine tree was to stall for time so that he, and Ling Er, and the others wouldn't be sacrificed by the Sun Clan, and also to see what the divine tree's new form would look like. However, after pouring Yang liquid and comforting it with his divine sense for so long, the divine tree had developed a sense of dependence and trust towards him. Perhaps it had mistaken him for its own family. Just like some creatures, they would feel a sense of closeness to the first living being they saw when they were born. The divine tree's current situation was similar. Yang Kai couldn't explain it clearly, but it shouldn't be a bad thing. After resting for a while, Yang Kai gradually recovered. After this round of fun, the divine tree seemed to be very tired because Yang Kai had sent his soul avatar into its trunk for the next few days, but the divine tree didn't respond at all, remaining completely silent. After a full 5 days, the divine tree finally woke up. This time though, its consciousness was much clearer than last time. Not only was it able to play with Yang Kai's soul avatar, but it was also able to transmit some vague information to him. The information it transmitted was quite confusing and Yang Kai couldn't figure out what it was trying to say. It was like it was talking to itself, full of curiosity and exploration about everything around it. Yang Kai smiled bitterly and could only grit his teeth and continue to accompany it. After such a long time, Yang Kai was both physically and mentally exhausted. Time passed by, and every day the Sun Clan's people would come to observe the situation to confirm that Yang Kai wasn't playing any tricks. They would also observe the divine tree's changes, but to no avail. The divine tree would also wake up every few days, and each time it would show a different change. After playing with Yang Kai for a while, it would go back to sleep, appearing somewhat carefree. As time passed, the divine tree's need to sleep became shorter and shorter. At first, it slept for 5 days, but gradually it became 4 days, 3 days, 2 days. From its consciousness, the information it conveyed gradually became clearer. Yang Kai knew that the divine tree's consciousness was about to be completely born, and suddenly his heart filled with anticipation. Chapter 771. In the heart of the divine tree, Yang Kai repeatedly transmitted his divine sense, guiding the divine tree's consciousness to perfect itself. After a long time, he began to treat the divine tree as a real life form. It had its own emotions, its own thoughts, and its own judgment, not just a simple towering tree. Under this premise, the divine tree became more and more friendly to him, opening its heart to him without the slightest bit of precaution. Its weak consciousness was like that of an ignorant and naughty baby. Every time Yang Kai's soul avatar entered the heart of the divine tree, it would show great joy, wrapping him up, pulling him along, shuttling through the trunk of the divine tree, as if it wanted to show him its own body. At this moment, its consciousness was very pure. It was completely like a piece of white paper that had not been stained. All of its emotions could be completely expressed. When Yang Kai came, it would be happy, but when Yang Kai left, it would feel sad and reluctant. Many times, even when it fell into a deep sleep, its spiritual energy would tightly wrap around Yang Kai's soul avatar, unwilling to let him leave. This made Yang Kai very happy, and he began to like this pure and subtle life form from the bottom of his heart. Its purity and simplicity made Yang Kai feel ashamed. While it was playing and communicating with Yang Kai, the divine tree's consciousness also grew rapidly. One day later, when Yang Kai's soul avatar entered the heart of the divine tree, an incomparably clear divine sense suddenly appeared in front of him, welcoming his arrival. Soon, the divine tree's consciousness rushed over, suspended in front of Yang Kai, and wrapped him up affectionately. Yang Kai was stunned for a moment, and after a long time, he tried to send a message to the divine tree. He hadn't expected it to respond so quickly. Although its expression wasn't very clear, at least Kai Yang was able to understand what it wanted to say to him. Yang Kai grinned as the divine tree's consciousness was finally born. After such a long supply of yang liquid, the divine tree had successfully evolved into a new life form. The emergence of this new life form was largely due to Yang Kai. Although the divine tree could still evolve without him, it was undoubtedly much earlier. A strong sense of accomplishment arose spontaneously. It was like watching the child that he had nurtured finally stand up and grow from babbling to learning how to walk. However, it still had a lot to learn. Yang Kai immediately began to teach it. He taught it how to express its emotions and how to communicate with itself normally. However, the little girl was too naughty. Compared to these, she seemed to be more willing to play with Yang Kai. God knows how much she learned. After a long while, Yang Kai's soul avatar emerged from the heart of the tree and rubbed his aching forehead. Just as he was feeling helpless, suddenly, many tree branches extended from the side. At the same time, a strand of divine sense surged into his mind, transmitting a message. Yang Kai was stunned. He raised his head and looked at the branches that extended over, only to see golden fruits growing on them. "For me," Yang Kai quickly responded. The branches trembled slightly. It seemed to be nodding. Yang Kai laughed involuntarily and shook his head. "Thank you for your kindness, but I can't take these fruits." There were still many Sun Clan masters watching from below, so if Yang Kai really took these fruits, he would inevitably be in trouble. Although he had always been envious of these fruits filled with rich Yang attribute energy, from the beginning until now, Yang Kai hadn't tried to pick them. But the divine tree refused to back down. It seemed that if Yang Kai didn't accept it, it wouldn't give up. It stubbornly stretched out its branches in front of him. No matter how Yang Kai tried to persuade it, it was useless. In the end, the fruits actually fell from the branches and into his arms on their own. Yang Kai's face went black, feeling like he couldn't explain himself no matter how he tried. The divine tree, on the other hand, seemed to have done something extraordinary and took back its branches, letting them flutter in the wind. Yang Kai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Looking at the 6 or 7 fruits in his arms, he didn't know whether to put them away or not. After thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai jumped down from the tree trunk and shouted. Immediately, a few Sun Clan masters who had been watching nearby came over and were about to ask what was going on when they suddenly saw the fruits in Yang Kai's arms and became angry. "Boy, you dare steal the divine tree's fruits? You're courting death." One of them was furious, his yuan qi surging as he spoke, ready to attack at a moment's notice. Yang Kai looked at him coldly and frowned. "I didn't steal them, they fell on their own." "Nonsense, even if the divine tree's fruits have been here for hundreds of years, as long as they aren't picked, they won't fall. Boy, your ability to lie through your teeth isn't small. I said I didn't steal them, I didn't steal them. If I did, I would have eaten them long ago." Yang Kai was too lazy to waste words with them and directly threw the fruits in his arms at them. The Sun Clan masters hurriedly caught them and glared at Yang Kai. The Sun Clan master who had just spoken coldly snorted, "Don't think you can escape punishment like this. We'll report this matter to leader and see how he punishes you." Yang Kai curled his lips, a look of indifference on his face. At that moment, a terrifying burst of energy suddenly erupted, filling the air with a frenzied aura as a series of golden whips shot towards the Sun Clan masters from the front, enveloping them in an attempt to envelop them. Perceiving the impending crisis, these Sun Clan masters' expressions changed greatly and they hurriedly leapt up in an attempt to avoid these attacks. But these attacks were incredibly fast, and not only were there many of them, the range of their attacks was also quite large. Before these Sun Clan masters could escape, these attacks had already struck their bodies. A series of light bangs rang out, interspersed with bursts of muffled groans, and all of the Sun Clan cultivators were sent flying while coughing up blood, unable to resist these attacks. One of the weaker Sun Clan clansmen was directly reduced to a bloody mist, not even his bones remaining. Yang Kai was stunned, and even Ling who was hiding behind him, couldn't help trembling as she stared blankly at the scene in front of her. The Sun Clan masters who had been sent flying and coughing up blood didn't even understand what had happened before the overwhelming golden light once again descended upon them. Even if they were prepared, they still couldn't resist such a violent and indiscriminate attack. ********** light bangs rang out incessantly as each Sun Clan cultivator was struck at least 100 times, and in the blink of an eye, 4 or 5 of them died on the spot, none of them surviving. Yang Kai turned around and stared at the giant divine tree behind him with trembling eyes. At this moment, there was no wind around them, but the divine tree was still rustling noisily as its lush branches and leaves writhed madly. From the crown of the divine tree, visible golden energy drooped down. These energies were like thick and long whips, incomparably sharp. The dead Sun Clan cultivator were all struck by these light whips. The ground was littered with blood and dismembered corpses, and a strong smell of blood filled the air. Yang Kai clearly felt that the divine tree was emitting a violent and hysterical mood, seemingly angered by the attitude of these people towards Yang Kai just now. Yang Kai was completely dumbfounded, never having expected such a sudden turn of events. He had only returned those fruits because he didn't want to cause any trouble. After all, he wasn't sure if he could escape from this place, let alone find a way to escape. Although he knew better than anyone that the divine tree had developed its own consciousness and was very different from before, he hadn't expected that it would act on his behalf and attack him in such a violent and direct manner. There was no need for any kind of strategy in its attacks. The massive amount of energy that was born from its body was the sharpest attack in the world. Yang Kai. And Ling Er's tender body trembled as she tightly clutched onto Yang Kai's clothes, her beautiful eyes widening as a look of confusion appeared on her face. Yang Kai regained his composure and quickly transmitted his divine sense to the divine tree, its furious mood gradually calming down. The energy whips dropped down and picked up the fruits that had fallen to the ground before delivering them to Yang Kai. Why does it seem to have a consciousness? And Ling Er's mind was in chaos as she stared blankly at the divine tree behind her. How should I explain this? Yang Kai smiled bitterly. While they were talking, the energy whips of the divine tree retracted and picked up all the fruits on its branches, handing them to Yang Kai in a fit of pique. There were a total of 60 to 70 fruits, each one filled with an unimaginable amount of energy. Yang Kai took a deep breath, feeling that this time he wouldn't be able to resolve this peacefully. The divine tree was only showing him good intentions. In its opinion, Killing those people wasn't a big deal at all, it was simply helping Yang Kai. However, its violent attacks also caused Yang Kai's eyes to light up. Each of the nearby Sun Clan cultivator was a transcendent, but they still couldn't resist the divine tree's indiscriminate bombardment and were instantly killed. A sharp light flashed across Yang Kai's eyes as a cold light flashed across his eyes, the corners of his mouth gradually rising. This time, perhaps there was an opportunity. I'll lift the seal on your body, you take care of yourself, Yang Kai quickly said to Enling sending his Yuan Qi and divine sense into her body at the same time. Yang Kai hadn't placed the seal on Enling body in his eyes, it was only because he didn't want to attract too much attention that he didn't lift it, but now that things had developed to a point where it was difficult to resolve, he had no choice but to take a gamble. In the blink of an eye, Enling felt her Yuan Qi begin to flow again and the seal on her knowledge sea shattered, allowing her to regain her freedom. In the next moment, countless figures rushed over from all directions. The Divine Tree's riot had obviously alarmed the Sun Clan, so the cultivator who had rushed over all had powerful auras and was clearly not weak. At first glance, seeing the blood and broken corpses all over the ground, these cultivators were immediately enraged. None of them had any intention to greet Yang Kai and instead rushed over, their murderous intent filling the air as their Yuan Qi surged. Yang Kai chuckled and calmly stored the Divine Tree's fruits into the black book space before sending out a burst of spiritual energy. Amidst this burst of spiritual energy, the soul-devouring insects had already hidden themselves. Chapter 772. The last time he had wreaked havoc in Ice Sect, Yang Kai had already tested the power of his soul-devouring insects and determined that no one below the Saint Realm could resist them. Although the first batch of Sun Clan members who had arrived wasn't weak and there were quite a few of them, none of them had reached this level of strength. A tidal wave of spiritual energy bombarded these people, and although none of them were injured, the soul-devouring insects had silently infiltrated their knowledge seas, waiting for Yang Kai's divine sense to attack and destroy their knowledge seas within 3 to 5 breaths. At the same time as Yang Kai made his move, the Divine Tree once again launched a violent attack, sending out streams of energy that were as heavy as 1,000 catties, each of them sweeping across the ground, creating a series of giant gullies. A series of rumbling sounds rang out as the Sun Clan cultivator suffered greatly, but none of them were able to get close to Yang Kai, all of them swept away by the Divine Tree's barrage of attacks, those who were unlucky enough to die on the spot. Taking the initiative, Yang Kai's expression became dignified. A tyrannical pressure suddenly spread out from the distance, and as this pressure approached, the Sun Clan's leader and several of the elders Yang Kai had met before finally arrived. "Leader, there's something wrong with the Divine Tree," the cultivator who had luckily escaped the Divine Tree's attack before quickly shouted. The leader's expression became gloomy as he stared at the Divine Tree in a daze, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he stared at Yang Kai coldly, his expression filled with shock. The other masters were even more shocked as they screamed, "How is this possible?" All of them were Saint Realm masters, so with their divine senses, they could naturally perceive that there was a consciousness inside the Divine Tree at this moment. This consciousness seemed to be quite disgusted with their spying and was repelling them with a strong hostility. The Divine Tree, does it have its own consciousness? The leader stared at Yang Kai with a pair of deep eyes and asked in a deep voice. Yang Kai chuckled, "Kind of. Did you do it?" "I just helped it, it can't be considered my contribution," Yang Kai shook his head. "So that's why it's so kind to you while rejecting my clan?" The leader was a shrewd man, and although he had never been clear about the inside story, after seeing the scene in front of him, he was certain. He quickly deduced the truth of the matter. A Divine Tree's consciousness. It would only ever be kind to those it felt familiar with. "The Divine Tree is my clan's, you little thief." The Sun Clan leader's anger in his heart. "I didn't want to steal it, it was close to me, what could I do? I really should have killed you then." As Yang Kai's expression, Yang Sect's Yang Kai's Yang Kai's Yang. "If you didn't act at that time, you won't have the chance now." Yang Kai raised his brow, his face brimming with confidence. "If that's what you think, then you're gravely mistaken." The Sun Clan leader smiled grimly. A trivial first-order transcendent dares act presumptuously in front of this old master, You really don't know how high the heavens are." As he spoke, suddenly, a subtle spiritual energy burst out from the leader's mind. Before Yang Kai had time to react, he felt a sharp pain in his knowledge sea and his whole body felt like it was being torn apart, his face distorting as his body trembled, large drops of sweat rolling down his forehead. Yang Kai didn't know what this leader's true cultivation was, but facing him, Yang Kai felt even greater pressure than when he faced Saintess Nan. This leader's strength was at least a second-order saint. This was a divine sense attack released by such a master. Even Yang Kai couldn't afford to underestimate it. Yang Kai's knowledge sea tumbled. Yang Kai couldn't help feeling a little dizzy and even had a feeling of nausea. The moment the leader released his divine sense attack, the several masters around him rushed up and used their killing moves on Yang Kai. A willow-like branch fell from the sky and wrapped around the leader before these attacks could reach him. Even An Ling who was standing beside Yang Kai and supporting him, was swept up into the air. An Ling cried out in alarm, and by the time she reacted, she had already landed on one of the divine tree's branches. She and Yang Kai were completely wrapped up in the dense foliage around them. At the same time, the energy fluctuations hanging down from the divine tree's crown turned into thousands of attacks and met the Sun Clan masters head-on. These people's expressions changed greatly, as if they hadn't expected such a turn of events. Just as they were about to chase after Yang Kai, they were hindered by the divine tree and worried that their attacks would damage the Sun Clan's foundation, causing them to feel extremely uncomfortable. After resisting for a while, they quickly withdrew. "Leader, the divine tree seems to be protecting him," one of the masters said with an extremely ugly expression. "I saw it." The leader's face was also like a storm, his expression extremely complicated. Not only was the divine tree protecting this little thief, but it was also attacking his own clansmen. These attacks were not inferior to the methods of a Saint Realm master, so it was obviously difficult to break through the divine tree's defenses. The Sun Clan leader felt an inexplicable sense of shame and unwillingness in his heart, as if the treasure he had spent his entire life guarding and raising had been taken away by a shameless bastard. But it doesn't matter, after taking one of my attacks, he shouldn't be able to live much longer. The Sun Clan leader coldly snorted, letting out a deep breath. With his cultivation, dealing with a young man like Yang Kai was as easy as pinching a snail, so he was certain that Yang Kai wouldn't be able to withstand such a blow. As soon as these words came out, a burst of deep and tragic laughter rang out from the divine tree's trunk. Everyone's faces went pale as they looked up, just in time to see Kai Yang staring at them with a pair of scarlet eyes through the countless branches. "Not dead." The Sun Clan leader's brow furrowed as he cried out, "Impossible. Even if this young man had an extremely high-grade soul-type artifact, he shouldn't have been able to resist his divine sense attack, and from the fluctuations of his spiritual energy, it was clear that this young man's soul had indeed been damaged, but he was still alive and well." Asterisk dong dong, asterisk dong dong, asterisk. A rhythmic and dull sound suddenly rang out from inside the divine tree, causing everyone to feel that something was wrong. The consciousness contained within the divine tree seemed to have suddenly lost all reason because of Yang Kai's attack. A violent aura began to spread outwards. The strength of this newly born life was beyond everyone's imagination. Even Yang Kai, who was immersed in the pain in his soul, was stunned for a moment, discovering that he had greatly underestimated this divine tree. With the roots of the divine tree as the center, the earth cracked open and a dense yang attribute energy swept out in all directions. Everything that was enveloped by this energy was incinerated into ashes. Even the masters from the Sun Clan had to circulate their yuan qi to resist this burning sensation, causing everyone's skin to turn red and their veins to bulge. The branches of the divine tree danced wildly, and the energy that hung down from its crown also lashed out randomly, creating a series of explosions in the air. Asterisk catcher. Asterisk. The huge divine tree swayed to the left, then to the right. Gradually, the frequency of the swaying became faster and faster. After a dozen breaths of time, under the stunned gazes of everyone present, the divine tree that had been rooted in this place actually broke free from the soil, its yang attribute energy visible to the naked eye transforming into a pillar that acted like a human's legs, supporting its huge body as it walked on the ground. Its roots were well developed, each of them sparkling like crystal, exuding a dazzling golden light. Ha 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 ha. Yang Kai covered his forehead with his hand and laughed wildly towards the sky, his laughter rolling like thunder, filling everyone's ears. This time, too many things had happened outside of his expectations. Even he hadn't expected the divine tree to have such an ability. Yang Kai didn't even care about the damage to his soul. With the nourishment and assistance of the six-colored soul-warming lotus, it wouldn't take long for him to recover from this injury. As long as it wasn't an attack that could shatter Yang Kai's knowledge sea and destroy his soul in a single blow, he wasn't afraid. The Sun Clan's leader obviously didn't have this ability. In contrast to his arrogance, all the Sun Clan members who had been stunned by this sudden attack, all of their expressions changed greatly. Seeing the divine tree rush straight towards them and unleash an unbridled attack, all of them hurriedly retreated. Letting the divine tree vent its emotions, Yang Kai patted its trunk and said, all right, just teach them a lesson." Yang Kai also saw that the divine tree's actions were very clumsy, and although its ability was good, it was still somewhat unrealistic for it to kill the Sun Clan's top masters. As long as these people stayed far away, they would be able to rest easy. Moreover, because the divine tree was the foundation of the Sun Clan, none of the Sun Clan's masters attacked Yang Kai, as if they were afraid of harming it. Now that he had the divine tree's protection, Yang Kai's first thought was to quickly leave this place. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. After listening to Yang Kai's words, the divine tree calmed down a lot, but the energy whip still lingered around it, warning any Sun Clan members who tried to approach. "Little thief, if you get down here now and beg for mercy, I may spare your life, but if you wait until my clansmen capture you, you won't have the chance to do so," the Sun Clan leader shouted from below, his old face twisting in anger. "I'm so scared." Yang Kai stood on the trunk of the divine tree with a frightened look on his face, infuriating the Sun Clan members below. "Do you think you can escape? Wishful thinking, daring to bewitch the divine tree into opposing my clan. Even if I have to chase you to the ends of the earth, I will tear you to pieces. Whatever you say, I'll treat it as a fart." Yang Kai curled his lips. Behind him, Ling was still a little nervous, as if she was in a dream, her thoughts in chaos, but when she heard Yang Kai's words, she couldn't help laughing. Yang Kai glanced over at her, his mood greatly improving as he shouted down, "Old dog, how about I discuss something with you? Do you think you're qualified to discuss anything with this old master?" The Sun Clan's leader glared at him as if he wanted to eat him alive, wanting nothing more than to cut him into 1,000 pieces and drink his blood. Chapter 773. Although the Sun Clan's masters were somewhat hesitant to act, they really didn't put a cultivator like Yang Kai in their eyes. In their minds, as long as they could find the right opportunity and take advantage of the divine tree's moment of weakness, they could take Yang Kai's life in one fell swoop. So after hearing Yang Kai's words, the Sun Clan's leader refused without hesitation. A great humiliation. In his own home, the divine tree, which was regarded as the foundation of the Sun Clan, had actually been bewitched by an outsider brat. This was simply a disgrace to the entire Sun Clan, so if he didn't kill Yang Kai, he wouldn't be able to vent the hatred in his heart. Yang Kai simply sneered. Under the protection of the divine tree's branches, he was extremely safe, looking down at the Sun Clan's leader and lightly saying, "I think I have the qualifications." As he spoke, a mysterious divine sense burst out from his knowledge sea. This divine sense didn't carry any murderous intent, nor did it have the slightest offensive power, but when this divine sense swept over the several Sun Clan members, they all screamed miserably, all of them clutching their heads and tumbling to the ground. After 3 breaths, these people's movements stiffened, their vitality drained away, and they all died, bleeding from their 7 orifices. The remaining Sun Clan members all paled while the leader stared at the scene in front of him in disbelief, a cold light flashing across his eyes. Even he hadn't been able to detect what kind of trick Yang Kai had used, but these few Sun Clan members who weren't weak had directly died. A chill suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart as the eyes of those who were still alive towards Yang Kai became somewhat different, filled with panic. "Little brat, you're trying to provoke me," the Sun Clan's leader said in a low voice, his murderous intent so thick it was tangible. Yang Kai's expression remained indifferent as he shook his head and smiled. "I just want to prove to you that I have the capital to negotiate with you." Saying so, his voice suddenly became cold. I don't have enough patience. Old dog, give me a reply as soon as possible, otherwise everyone here, except for the Saint Realm, will die. Hearing this, 80% of the remaining Sun Clan members retreated a few steps in horror. They seemed to think that this would make them safer. Little did they know that the soul-devouring worms had already invaded their spiritual sea and were dormant. The Sun Clan leader took a deep breath, his eyes filled with hatred as he glared at Yang Kai. Only after a long silence did he finally ask, "What do you want?" "Let us go. That's my only request," Yang Kai shouted. "Leader, we can't let him go. Our clan has suffered such heavy losses. How can we let him leave? Isn't this letting him off too easily?" Immediately, someone raised an objection. "That's right. If I don't kill this kid, I won't be able to calm my anger. Kill him, we must kill him, even if it means harming the divine tree." The several Saint Realm masters began to discuss amongst themselves. He looked like he had to kill Yang Kai. It seemed like there was no room for negotiation. Yang Kai chuckled and shouted towards the crowd below, "Your losses are indeed not small, but have you thought about the great gains you've made? Your divine tree has already developed its own consciousness and is completely different from before. As long as I leave, you can try to get closer to it. Gain its approval. In the future, you can obtain unimaginable benefit." As soon as these words were spoken, the huge divine tree trembled. A dissatisfied divine sense was transmitted from the divine tree's heart, as if it had been wronged by Yang Kai's decision to abandon it. Yang Kai's heart clenched as he quickly released his divine sense to comfort it, "But if I were to stay, the situation would be different. Because I was the one who gave the divine tree this form of life, it is now very close to me. As long as I have enough time, I can make it belong to me forever. When that time comes, even if you want to take it away, you won't be able to. This won't take too long, perhaps a few days or so, so if I were you, I would send this person who threatens the interests of our clan away as soon as possible." The Sun Clan's people all frowned. Yang Kai's words were spoken from their standpoint, and although there was some suspicion of fraud, it was undeniable that what he said was reasonable. The divine tree having undergone such a huge change was a pleasant surprise. If the previous losses were ignored, such a change was undoubtedly a great thing for the entire Sun Clan. A divine tree with wisdom and soul, this was something the Sun Clan had never even dreamed of. "We can still kill you and pull up the roots." The Sun Clan's leader seemed a little tempted, but thinking of the losses his clan had suffered, he still wasn't willing to let Yang Kai live, gnashing his teeth and saying, "As long as you die, the divine tree will still belong to my clan." "Yes." Yang Kai chuckled, "You people indeed have the ability to kill me, and I don't think I can escape from so many of you, but I can at least drag a few of you down with me. You'll have to be able to afford this price. Besides, if you want to kill me, you'll have to damage the divine tree. If you hurt it, do you think it will accept you? This little guy's mind is very simple right now. If you hurt it, it will remember it for the rest of its life. Old dog, don't try to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. If that happens, you'll suffer a double loss. Where will you put your old face then?" Yang Kai's arrogant speech caused the Sun Clan's leader's face to darken, his expression filled with both anger and helplessness. The people who had just been clamoring to kill Yang Kai also frowned, secretly feeling that the situation had become a bit tricky. If the divine tree didn't have wisdom and soul, even if it had to suffer some damage, they would still have to kill Yang Kai. However, the divine tree had its own thoughts, so none of them dared to act rashly. They were all worried that the divine tree would hold a grudge against them in the future and not allow them to absorb any Yang attribute energy, which would be the end of the entire Sun Clan. Turning their eyes to the leader, they waited for him to make the final decision. At this time, none of them were willing to easily voice their opinions. The Sun Clan's leader pondered for a while before glaring at Yang Kai coldly and shouting, "Can you guarantee that after you leave, the divine tree will accept us? Why would I promise you anything? You'll have to work hard. It's best if you treat me more kindly now. The way you treat me so fiercely will make it very unhappy." As if in response to Yang Kai's words, the divine tree's branches and lush leaves shook violently, like an angry giant. Many of the Sun Clan's masters couldn't help frowning, feeling a burst of bitterness in their hearts. One or two of them quickly restrained their hostility, but their expressions were still extremely ugly. Good, let's just smile a little more. Meeting is fate, we're all good friends, right? Boy, don't push your luck. The Sun Clan's leader's old face pulled a long face, extremely unhappy. Yang Kai spat disdainfully. Good, I'll let you go, but I hope you don't let me see you again in the future, the Sun Clan's leader shouted. Tactful. Yang Kai looked at him approvingly before adding, not only do you have to let me go, but also my female companion. Oh right, also those two from the demon race. The Sun Clan's leader frowned. You want to take those two from the demon race away? They have nothing to do with you. I'm a kind-hearted person who enjoys helping others. I can't bear to see others suffer. And Ling who had been hiding behind Yang Kai, heard this and quickly rolled her eyes. In any case, your divine tree has already completed its evolution and has gained sentience and sentience. There's no need to use the demon race as a blood sacrifice, Yang Kai continued to persuade. The Sun Clan's leader nodded lightly and shouted, go and bring those two from the demon race here. Immediately, a few people hurriedly left in the direction of the palace. Yang Kai stood on the tree trunk and waited for a while before the Sun Clan's leader escorted Go Che and the other from the demon race over. Go Che's face was gloomy as he continued to resist, but this resistance was counterproductive. By the time he arrived here, his face was bruised and swollen. It seemed he had suffered quite a few beatings. Brother Go Che! Yang Kai shouted from the tree trunk. Go Che frowned, his expression becoming somewhat strange as he nodded slightly but didn't say anything, instead glancing around suspiciously. He could feel that the atmosphere at the scene was somewhat tense, but he couldn't figure out what was going on. At this time, it was best to remain silent, otherwise it would be easy to say something wrong. Pull them up. Yang Kai patted the divine tree and ordered. The next moment, two long whips of energy flew towards Go Che and the other from the demon race, and before they could react, they were lifted into the air and gently placed on the tree trunk. After landing, Go Che quickly asked in a low voice, Brother, what's the situation now? I'll take you out of here. Yang Kai chuckled. Out of here? Go Che's expression changed slightly. Where? Out of here. Go Che was dumbfounded, quietly glancing down and whispering, did they agree? They had no choice but to agree. Don't worry, I've already negotiated with them. How come it doesn't look like they want to kill you? How could they possibly let you go? Go Che was completely confused. Yang Kai nodded, not explaining too much, instead shouting down, where's the exit? The Sun Clan's leader wore a cold expression as he took a deep breath and pointed in a certain direction. Yang Kai looked over and patted the divine tree. In the next moment, the huge divine tree slowly began moving, accompanied by a series of muffled thumps that caused the earth to tremble as it carried Yang Kai's group of 4 towards the exit. Behind them, a group of Sun Clan masters followed closely. Go Che couldn't help widening his eyes as he stared blankly at the giant tree, calling out in shock, Brother, what kind of method is this? Why is this tree walking on its own? Haha. The divine tree has developed its own consciousness and wisdom, it can understand what I'm saying. Unheard of. Go Che wore a look of disbelief as he stared at the divine tree in amazement, discovering that it really was walking on its own, the energy it exuded forming pillars that supported its huge body like human legs. In an instant, Go Che felt like his horizons had been broadened. The other from the demon race also felt the same way, remaining silent for a long time, somewhat absent-minded. The divine tree's movements were relatively clumsy, neither too fast nor too slow. After walking for half a day, Yang Kai finally felt a trace of void force fluctuations in front of him. Chapter 774. The power of the void was very special. It would only be emitted from the void corridor. The presence of void force meant that there was a void corridor in front of them. Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he stared into the distance. After a while, a dark hole appeared in front of everyone's eyes, about a few dozen kilometers away from where the Sun Clan people lived. No wonder I didn't notice the existence of void force until now, Yang Kai thought to himself. A moment later, the divine tree stopped in front of the void corridor. This void corridor was about 10 meters in diameter and could accommodate several people at the same time, but with the divine tree's massive body, it was impossible for them to enter. If they tried to force their way in, there was a high chance they would destroy the void corridor and be torn to pieces by the chaotic void force. Brother Go Che, do you have any impression of this place? Yang Kai asked solemnly. Go Che looked around for a while before nodding lightly. Ien, after we were captured, we were brought here from here. Good. Yang Kai nodded with satisfaction. Although he had negotiated with the Sun Clan people, no one knew if they would take him to another void corridor. If the world on the other side wasn't the demon land, but instead a dangerous zone or even unknown place, all his efforts would be in vain. Little brat, you're quite cautious. The Sun Clan leader sneered. Since this old master agreed to let you leave, he won't go back on his word, and there is only one entrance here, there are no other void corridors. It's better to be safe than sorry. Yang Kai didn't mind, his expression becoming serious again as he turned to Go Che and the other demon raceman and said, You take Ling and leave first, I'll catch up later. Go Che and the demon raceman's Yuan Qi divine sense had been sealed, so apart from having a slightly stronger physique, they were no different from ordinary mortals, so there was no point in staying behind. Hearing this, both of them nodded. The demon raceman didn't say a word. Directly jumping into the void corridor and disappearing, Go Che quickly exhorting Yang Kai, Brother, you must be careful, I'll wait for you over there. Yang Kai smiled and nodded. Go Che left with Ling, their figures disappearing into the void corridor. Ling glanced back worriedly towards Yang Kai, seemingly worried that he would not be able to escape. After the three of them left, Yang Kai took a deep breath. Not only did he not leave, he even sat down cross-legged on the tree trunk. The Sun Clan's brow furrowed as they stared at him vigilantly, fearing he was up to no good again. Kid, why haven't you left yet? I've already fulfilled all your request. The Sun Clan leader stared at Yang Kai like he was some kind of plague, wishing he could send him far, far away. This time, they had suffered a big loss, but as long as they could obtain this sentient divine tree, the price they had to pay was worth it. What's the rush? Let me rest for a while. Yang Kai chuckled. Seeing that he was really circulating his Yuan Qi, he began to regulate his breathing. His mind was already silently immersed in the tree trunk. His soul avatar manifested in the heart of the tree. With the divine tree's protection, Yang Kai didn't need to worry about the Sun Clan masters secretly attacking him. Feeling Yang Kai's arrival, the divine tree immediately began to rejoice. The divine tree immediately rejoiced, the energy flowing through its trunk becoming much more rapid. Don't be so happy. Yang Kai quickly transmitted his divine sense. I want to ask you, I want to leave this place now, are you willing to come with me? The divine tree's soul energy immediately wrapped around Yang Kai, expressing its eagerness to leave. That means you're willing. Yang Kai grinned, very good, although I've never tried it before, this method should work. I hope it does. Remember, if it doesn't work, you'll probably have to stay here for a while. I promise you, it won't be long before I come back and take you away. Yang Kai's message was a bit complex, and the divine tree didn't seem to understand it for a while, but from Yang Kai's mood, it was still able to sense some information. It was a little unhappy for a moment, but it soon cheered up again, seemingly having recovered from Yang Kai's promise. Then it's settled, I'll brand you first. Yang Kai said, not hesitating to consume a huge amount of spiritual energy to leave his brand on the divine tree's soul. This way, even if he couldn't take the divine tree away today, he would be able to sense its existence through this subtle brand. This method was different from subduing Ling's soul brand, one was to receive while the other was to give. In other words, if the divine tree's soul was damaged, Yang Kai's soul would also be injured, but if Ling was injured, Yang Kai would be fine. After communicating with the divine tree, Yang Kai's consciousness flew out of the divine tree's soul and returned to his body. In front of everyone's eyes, Yang Kai slowly stood up and stared down at the Sun Clan masters below indifferently, a strange light flashing across his eyes as he stood tall and straight like a javelin, his expression firm and cold. The Sun Clan leader's heart clenched as he coldly shouted, "Not good, this little brat didn't keep his word, he's probably trying to play some kind of trick." Yang Kai laughed loudly and shouted, "I'm not trying to play any tricks, I'm just giving you a little surprise before we part." Saying so, Yang Kai's spiritual energy burst out from his knowledge sea and directly wrapped up the divine tree. Inside his body, where the wordless black book was hidden, a huge suction force suddenly appeared. Dong. Kai Yang's heart suddenly contracted, and a muffled sound like the beating of a drum rang out. His face instantly became white as paper and his body began to sway. At this moment, Yang Kai felt the aura of death wash over him. However, in front of everyone's eyes, the huge divine tree actually transformed into a stream of light and strangely disappeared. Everyone was dumbfounded, and for a moment they were all dumbfounded. Yang Kai forced himself to remain conscious, not allowing himself to pass out on the spot, turning around and leaping into the void corridor, the several killing moves he had prepared for this moment suddenly bombarding the surrounding area. Yuan Qi fluctuated wildly as the energy fluctuations around it became chaotic. Hong long long. A loud explosion rang out and the void corridor began to distort and distort. Chaotic void force burst out from the black hole and the void corridor rapidly shrank, disappearing from the Sun Clan's line of sight. At the same time, screams rang out one after another from all directions. The moment Yang Kai left, the dormant soul-devouring insects were no longer restrained and suddenly attacked, killing all the cultivators below the Saint Realm. The Sun Clan leader and the other Saint Realm masters all grimaced, none of them able to speak. Their minds went blank. The divine tree had mysteriously disappeared. The void corridor had been destroyed, and countless of their clansmen had been killed or injured. All of this was simply unacceptable to them. The destruction of the void corridor was within their expectations. The Sun Clan masters had long seen through Yang Kai's intentions, but none of them had tried to stop him. In any case, they had all lived in this mysterious small world for their entire lives. Outside was the demon land, so it wasn't safe for them to enter and exit. The destruction of the void corridor was one thing. The deaths of their clansmen were also understandable. This little brat's methods were mysterious. He had silently killed several of their clansmen before, right under their noses. Now, he was probably using the same trick again. However, what they couldn't understand was how the divine tree had disappeared. The void corridor wasn't big enough to support the divine tree's escape. Its shape was simply too large, making it impossible to squeeze through, but in front of everyone's eyes, the divine tree had indeed mysteriously disappeared. "Little bastard, I'll tear you to 10,000 pieces," the Sun Clan leader suddenly roared hysterically, his red hair fluttering wildly, making him look like a mad demon. The other Sun Clan masters also swore vows of vengeance. But there was no one left to vent their anger on. In a sea of sand, Yang Kai's body fell heavily onto the hot sand. Go Che and the others, who had arrived here ahead of time, quickly rushed over. After seeing Yang Kai's current state, and Ling immediately panicked. Yang Kai's face was pale and his lips were blue. His Yuan Qi was in chaos and his spiritual energy was almost completely depleted. From the outside, although he didn't show any signs of injury, his body was extremely cold, as if he was nearing the end of his life. A slow but powerful heartbeat could be heard coming from his chest. Even when he was chased down by Saintess Nan last time, Yang Kai had not fallen into such a miserable state. And Ling didn't know what happened inside that mysterious small world after she left, but Yang Kai's current state made her feel extremely anxious. Brother. Go Che also hurried over and shook Yang Kai's arm, but didn't get any response. After carefully examining Yang Kai, Go Che found that his pupils were dilated and his soul was scattered. It seemed that his knowledge sea had suffered a great deal of damage. "It's hopeless." The other demon race master slowly shook his head, his expression somewhat sad. Although he didn't have much friendship with Yang Kai, this time it was all thanks to Yang Kai that he was able to survive. Seeing Yang Kai like this, he couldn't help feeling a bit bitter. Go Che pursed his lips, wanting to say something, but seeing Ling Er's sad appearance, he couldn't bear to say anything. They still had a lot of pills on them, but inside that mysterious small world, even their universe bags had been taken away by the Sun Clan, so even if they wanted to rescue Yang Kai, they were powerless. Yuan Qi and his soul had been sealed, so there was no way they could help. "No, he won't die," and Ling Er shook her head. And Ling kept shaking her head as she hugged Yang Kai's upper body and placed his head on her lap. Her trembling hands gently wiped the dust off Yang Kai's face, carefully lest her movements hurt him. Last time he suffered such a serious injury but didn't die, so this time he won't die. Dong. Another strange heartbeat sounded from Yang Kai's heart, and after this heartbeat, Yang Kai's life aura seemed to weaken significantly. And Ling burst into tears, her heart filled with pain. "Sister, don't cry," Goche called out. Goche muttered, "Isn't your true chi not sealed? Quickly try and see if you can save him." Hearing this, Ling awoke from her stupor and quickly used all of Nine Heavens Holy Land's mysterious divine skills in an attempt to restore Yang Kai's vitality, but no matter how hard she tried, Yang Kai showed no signs of improvement, causing her to be at a loss for what to do. "Ha!" Goche sighed heavily, feeling sorry for Yang Kai. Originally, Goche had wanted to find an opportunity to repay him for saving his life, but now, of the four of them, 3 had successfully escaped from that mysterious small world while Yang Kai had become like this. Chapter 775. During the day, the desert was unbearably hot, but at night, it was bitterly cold. Under the full moon, a burst of cold air visible to the naked eye seemed to emerge from the sand like a ghost, bringing with it a bone-chilling chill. As far as the eye could see, the entire sea of sand seemed to be covered with a thin layer of ice. It was sparkling and translucent, and when the moonlight shone down, it was reflected, making everything look so beautiful and magnificent. Somewhere in the desert, Ling was hugging Yang Kai, her yuan qi surging as she used her own body temperature to warm Yang Kai's gradually cooling body. Yang Kai seemed to be really dead. Since escaping from the mysterious small world during the day, he hadn't moved even once. At first, there was still some warmth and heartbeat, but as time passed, his body became colder and colder, and his vitality became more and more subtle, like a candle in the wind and rain, in danger of being extinguished at any moment. And Ling carefully guarded him, never leaving his side. This was the future master of the Holy Land. Even if Ling was dead, she didn't dare harm him, her beautiful face filled with unwavering determination. Shaw. Not far away, a rustling sound rang out, causing Ling to raise her head and see Goche, who had left to explore the way, return. Even with his strong physique, in this desert at night, he couldn't resist the cold, shivering as he ran, his hair covered in ice. And Ling beautiful eyes flashed a look of vigilance. When Yang Kai was still alive, she had some contact with Goche and knew that this demon race youth was a bit of a pervert. Now that Yang Kai's fate was unknown, she felt she had to be on guard against Goche. However, thinking that the other party's yuan qi and divine sense had all been sealed, Ling relaxed a lot. "How is he?" Goche came up to Ling and hurriedly asked. Ling slowly shook her head. "It seems he really can't be saved. I won't allow you to say that, he's still alive." Ling immediately became annoyed, her almond eyes widening. Good, I won't say it, but the world is unpredictable, you should be mentally prepared. Why is Brother Yang's life so hard? Goche sighed. Seeing that Yang Kai had suffered such misfortune in order to help them escape, Goche's tone towards him became much warmer. If he can come back to life, that would be for the best. Father was thinking of taking him to Qingliao City and entertaining him. As he spoke, he sat down on the sand with a pained expression on his face. Suddenly, he chuckled meaningfully. "I've found that you humans are quite interesting. I've caught many humans before, but none of them are as amazing as little brother Yang. Those guys, as soon as they encounter danger, they immediately flee." So he knelt on the ground and kowtowed, begging for mercy. His face was so ugly. "Brother Yang, you have a backbone. You have the same courage as the people of the demon race. You would rather die than submit. That's a real man." Goche's bragging attracted Ling's attention and she quietly glanced over at him. He said softly, "The humans you captured. Where did they go?" Goche calmly gestured with his hand, causing Ling's pretty face to go black. She immediately turned her head away and refused to talk to him. The desert was extremely quiet at night, with only a few scorpion-like creatures shuttling through the sand. Go Che casually grabbed a few of them and ate them with relish. As he ate, he commented, as if it was the most delicious food in the world. Later in the night, the desert became colder and colder. Yang Kai's last remaining vitality was also rapidly fading away. Noticing this, whether it was Ling or Go Che, both of them couldn't help secretly observing him nervously. Half an hour later, that last bit of vitality was suddenly extinguished. Ling Er's beautiful eyes suddenly lost focus and her tender body couldn't help trembling. Go Che also sighed heavily, lamenting that the heavens were jealous of such a talented individual. While the two of them were immersed in their grief, Kai Yang's body suddenly burst forth with a burst of vitality. This vitality was like a raging flame, rapidly increasing in intensity. His originally cold body suddenly became scorching hot, his true qi rapidly flowing through his meridians, emitting a gurgling sound. With a soft sound, Yang Kai's entire body burst into flames, the yuan qi that had seeped out of his body quickly melting the nearby sand into magma. Ling was startled and hurriedly dodged, but even so, she was nearly scalded. Go Che also stared dumbfounded at this moment. Yang Kai, a scorpion tail quietly falling from the corner of his mouth. With a loud cry, Yang Kai coughed up a dark blood mist, quickly withdrawing the yuan qi that had burst out of his body. Quickly standing up, Yang Kai glanced around blankly. After seeing Ling and Go Che's shocked expressions, Yang Kai let out a sigh of relief and gradually withdrew his vigilant divine sense. Slowly sitting down on the ground, Yang Kai adjusted his heartbeat and breathing, the scenes before he fell unconscious flashing through his mind, quickly understanding his current situation. His body didn't show any abnormalities, but his knowledge was in extreme pain. Unable to restrain himself, Yang Kai let out a groan as he clutched his head, his body twitching uncontrollably. After a while, Yang Kai gradually stabilized, but the pain in his head didn't diminish in the slightest. "Where are we?" Yang Kai raised his head and asked in a low voice. His face was distorted by the unbearable pain, making him look extremely terrifying. "The Demon Land's desert." Go Che was stunned for a moment before quickly replying, immediately asking with concern, "Brother Yang, are you dead or alive?" Yang Kai raised his eyes and glanced over at him weakly. "What do you think?" "Haha." Go Che laughed. "I knew you wouldn't die so easily. Who just said he couldn't be saved?" Ling shot him a cold look. Go Che's expression suddenly became awkward and he didn't say anything. "How do you feel now?" Ling turned her eyes to Yang Kai and asked nervously. "Not good." Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Even now, his soul was still in turmoil and extremely unstable. "Then you should quickly rest." Yang Kai nodded lightly, no longer speaking, sitting down cross-legged on the ground and calming his mind before sending his soul avatar into his knowledge sea to carefully examine it. His entire knowledge sea was desolate and the burning sea water that was originally stored here had almost dried up. This was a sign that his spiritual energy had been overdrawn. Inside his knowledge sea, the world was also very chaotic. From time to time, the wind would blow and lightning would flash, as if it had reached its limit and was on the verge of collapse. The reason for this, Yang Kai knew that it was because he had placed the divine tree into the black book space. He had never thought that doing so would cause him to walk through the gates of hell and almost lose his life. In the past, the things he had stored in the black book space were all very small, the largest only 1% the size of the divine tree, so even if he consumed a large amount of spiritual energy, it wouldn't consume much. But this time, Yang Kai's spiritual energy had been completely exhausted, so after placing the divine tree into the black book space, his entire body had collapsed. After all, the divine tree was different from the things he had stored in the past. Not only was it massive, but it also contained an unimaginable amount of energy, so it was understandable that he had to pay such a price. But it was worth it. Being able to take away the divine tree, Yang Kai felt that even if he had to pay an even greater price, it was worth it. This way, he wouldn't have to worry about not fulfilling his promise to the divine tree. Yang Kai was a man of his word. His spiritual energy could be replenished by cultivation, and with the assistance of the 6-colored soul-warming lotus, it wouldn't be long before his spiritual energy was restored to its peak. Moreover, in this incident, The six-colored soul-warming lotus had played an indelible role. If it hadn't protected Yang Kai's soul from destruction, Yang Kai would likely have already died. Considering all this, Yang Kai rejoiced. His soul avatar slowly withdrew from his knowledge sea and entered the black book space. As soon as he entered, Yang Kai was dazzled by the golden light that filled his eyes. The divine tree now stood here, its roots, branches, and leaves all exuding a brilliant golden light, illuminating the black book space. On top of that, the scorching aura exuding from its body greatly alleviated Yang Kai's pain, causing him to feel warm and comfortable. Seemingly aware of Yang Kai's arrival, the divine tree's branches and leaves danced as it sent out a call from its divine sense. Yang Kai smiled lightly as his soul avatar rushed into the divine tree's heart. The divine tree's soul immediately wrapped around him. It should also know that Yang Kai was very weak at the moment, so it didn't recklessly drag his soul around like before, instead carefully wrapping around Yang Kai. The next moment, a powerful burst of energy poured into Yang Kai's soul, quickly replenishing his spiritual energy. Yang Kai was pleasantly surprised but didn't try to stop it, instead just standing there leisurely, allowing the divine tree to display its means. After an hour or so, Yang Kai's previous weak appearance was replaced by one of high spirits, his dried-up knowledge sea once again restored to its previous full state. All of his internal injuries had been healed. After communicating with the divine tree for a while, Yang Kai informed it that he might need to stay in this space for a while. After receiving a response, Yang Kai left, but he also promised that as long as he had time, he would come back to accompany it. The divine tree was reluctant to part with him, but it didn't try to stop him. When Yang Kai opened his eyes again, the darkness had receded and daylight had once again descended. After frowning and contemplating for a while, Yang Kai let out a sigh of relief. He estimated that before he reached the Saint Realm, it would be very dangerous to take the divine tree out of the black book space. Only after reaching the Saint Realm would he be able to do so unscathed. However, Yang Kai wasn't in a hurry. Now that he was in the demon land, even if he released the divine tree, there was no place to put it. Yang Kai needed to find a good place for it. Soaring Heaven Sect's serene resplendent peak was a good place for it. Seeing Yang Kai open his eyes, Go Che and An Ling who had been paying close attention to him all night, also relaxed. "Brother, why do I feel like you've recovered so quickly?" Go Che asked curiously. More than an hour ago, Yang Kai looked like he was on the brink of death. Even if his ability to recover was fast, it shouldn't be this bad, and Go Che hadn't even seen him take any kind of pill. It was really strange. Chapter 776. I've only recovered a little, Yang Kai smiled. Although he had rescued Go Che and another member of the demon race from the Sun Clan, Yang Kai didn't intend to make friends with someone like Go Che. Rescuing him this time was simply out of necessity. Yang Kai wanted to borrow his strength to traverse the demon land unimpeded. Therefore, he didn't tell Go Che the truth. Subconsciously, he was still somewhat wary of the people from the demon race, and he also felt that if Go Che didn't take him seriously, even if he had saved him, he wouldn't care. "Brother Go Che, you said before that this is the demon land's yellow sand sea? Are you familiar with this place?" Yang Kai asked again. Go Che frowned and shook his head. "The yellow sand sea is very dangerous, even my demon race members don't easily set foot in this place. Here, even if you have extraordinary means, you won't necessarily be able to use them. I only know that this is the yellow sand sea, but I don't know which direction we should go. We can only pray that we find the right direction and that we don't encounter too much danger along the way, or that we don't get lost. If we do, I'm afraid we'll never be able to leave this place." Hearing him say this, Yang Kai and An Ling hearts tightened again, both of them quickly realizing that their luck had been quite bad recently. Being chased by Saintess Nan on the outer islands and forced to flee into the void corridor, falling into the hands of the Sun Clan. Only after narrowly escaping death did they end up in the demon land's yellow sand sea. The ups and downs of life really made one feel helpless. Just as he was speaking though, Yang Kai's brow suddenly furrowed as he stared in a certain direction and shouted, "Someone's coming." Probing the source of this sound, Yang Kai couldn't help letting out a light sigh, turning a strange look towards Go Che. "It's that clansman of yours." "Oh." Go Che raised his brow. "So that guy didn't die. He didn't return last night, so I thought he must have died outside. His life is quite tenacious." His tone was light and indifferent, as if he didn't care about his companion's life at all. Whether he lived or died had nothing to do with him. Yang Kai secretly frowned. A moment later, the man from the demon race who was rescued by Yang Kai from the sealed world bead really returned with a look of joy on his face. "I found a way out." Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed, Go Che hurriedly asking, "Really?" The man smiled and nodded. "I can't be wrong. I came to the Yellow Sea once before and saw an oasis. I even chopped down a tree, and there are still traces of it. Moreover, our luck is not bad. This is the periphery of the desert sea, not too deep. We only need to walk in that direction for a few days and we will be able to leave the desert sea." While that person was speaking, his face was filled with excitement and joy, and he seemed to be extremely happy. Yang Kai and Ling also let out a sigh of relief, a feeling of joy after extreme misfortune. These days, his luck was already bad enough. If it continued, Yang Kai would have to consider whether he should find a place to go into seclusion for the time being. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go, father here's dying of thirst." Go Che waved his hand and rushed off in that direction. The man from the demon race didn't speak any nonsense. He immediately led the way. "Let's go too," Yang Kai said to Ling. The latter nodded slightly and kept up with Yang Kai's pace. The two of them walked side by side. As the two men from the demon race rushed forward in high spirits, Ling glanced over at them and suddenly whispered, "Yang Kai, you have to be careful of this Go Che. Don't treat him with sincerity, otherwise you'll suffer a loss." "Do I need you to remind me?" Yang Kai chuckled. "I didn't intend to form any kind of friendship with him. However, we are now in the demon land, so if we want to leave safely, we really need to rely on his strength." Ling nodded lightly and sighed. "Fortunately, he didn't see much of your true strength in that mysterious small world, otherwise, this trip might have been really dangerous. If he knew your identity, we would also be in danger." Yang Kai's expression became gloomy as he secretly warned, "Don't reveal your identity, and don't use your 9 heavens holy land's divine skills again. I'm not a little girl, how could I be so careless?" Ling smiled. "Hurry up, brother Yang, what are you waiting for?" Go Che suddenly turned his head and shouted to Yang Kai. "Coming." Yang Kai responded, turning to Ling and saying, "Let's move faster." The demon raceman's ability to identify directions was quite amazing. Walking through this endless sea of sand without any reference point, he was still able to accurately find the right direction. This was especially true now that his Yuan Qi and divine sense were both sealed, so he could only rely on his own instincts to lead the way, making him even more valuable. After walking for about 3 hours, in the distance, in the middle of the endless sea of sand, a bright green color appeared in everyone's eyes. An oasis. It was the only magical place in the desert that had water and plants. Almost every desert had such a place. No one knew how an oasis was born, let alone how it existed in this vast expanse of sand. Large oases could even be preserved for hundreds or thousands of years without change, providing a place for travelers to rest. In the eyes of desert travelers, oases were often life-saving places. Seeing the oasis in front of them, the two demon racemen ran even faster and soon rushed in. After a stick of incense worth of time, Yang Kai and Ling also arrived. Unlike the heat outside, this place was quite cool, with huge cacti and poplar trees growing all over the oasis, and a gentle breeze blowing through them, making them feel very comfortable. At the center of this oasis, there was also a sparkling lake. This lake's water was clear, like a bottomless spring, and there were many strange plants growing around it. When Yang Kai and Ling arrived, they found that Go Che and the demon raceman hadn't entered the water but were instead hiding behind a rock on the shore, both of them holding their breaths as they stared out towards the lake. Both of them appeared to be very cautious, both of them wearing lustful expressions on their faces. Feeling Yang Kai's arrival, Go Che quickly turned around and gestured towards him, a strange expression appearing on his face. Yang Kai's brow furrowed, not knowing what Go Che was up to, so he quietly led Ling over to the rock but couldn't see anything. "What are you doing?" Yang Kai asked softly. "Look over there." Go Che quietly pointed in a certain direction. Yang Kai and Ling looked in the direction Go Che was pointing and suddenly narrowed their eyes. On the shore, some neatly folded clothes were placed there, and from the style and color of these clothes, it was obvious they belonged to a woman. The clothes were here, but the person was nowhere to be seen. Obviously, she was swimming at the bottom of the lake. Go Che and the demon raceman hiding here obviously wanted to peep at the moment this beautiful woman came out of her bath. Yang Kai suddenly understood. Scoundrel. And Ling cheeks flushed red as she ground her teeth and cursed under her breath, her beautiful eyes filled with disdain as she tugged at Yang Kai and angrily said, "Don't associate yourself with them." Yang Kai curled his lips. "I've always kept myself clean, I wouldn't do such a dirty thing." Saying so, he glanced towards the lake's surface a few times. Go Che saw Yang Kai's small movements and grinned. "Little brother Yang really is a kindred spirit." At this moment, Go Che felt like he had found a kindred spirit and found Yang Kai much more pleasing to the eye. Yang Kai said seriously, "Isn't it a bit inappropriate for you to be like this? If you're discovered, so what if she discovers me? Can she eat me?" Go Che snorted, not showing the slightest worry. Although he couldn't use his strength right now, in the end, his identity was still there. The average demon race man really wouldn't dare attack him, so even if he was caught peeping, he wouldn't care. "Brother Go Che, you don't lack women, why do you need to do such a thing?" Although Yang Kai also knew that this man's mentality was very subtle, he still faintly felt something was wrong and quickly tried to persuade Go Che to leave. Go Che grinned wickedly. "Naturally I don't lack women, but this is more exciting." The demon raceman next to him also nodded, agreeing with Go Che's point of view, his two pairs of eyes staring towards the lake's surface, secretly looking forward to the moment the woman at the bottom of the lake would appear. Yang Kai was helpless and didn't waste any more words. At that moment though, a layer of bubbles suddenly appeared on the surface of the lake, causing the two demon racemen's breathing to stagnate as their eyes bulged. Asterisk shio shio shio. Asterisk the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out as a series of water arrows shot out from the bottom of the lake. Everyone's expression changed greatly. Yang Kai and Ling reacted quickly and hurriedly dodged, but Go Che and the demon raceman weren't so lucky. In order to see more clearly, the two of them had to stick close to the rock, so when the water arrows struck, they simply couldn't avoid them. With a loud bang, the rock shattered, sending stone fragments flying everywhere. These stone fragments contained a ferocious force, causing Go Che and the demon raceman to howl miserably, unable to open their eyes. In just a flash, the two men were covered in wounds, their flesh lacerated. Yang Kai saw a wisp of white light shoot out from the bottom of the lake, faintly discernible and graceful. But before he could see clearly, he lost sight of his target, causing his expression to go cold as his pores opened wide. After everything stabilized, Go Che suddenly cursed, "Fuck, that bitch actually dared to attack father." As soon as these words left his mouth, a loud bang rang out as Go Che was sent tumbling through the air several times before landing heavily on the ground. When he stood up again, his cheeks were swollen and his brow furrowed in anger, as if he was about to go all out and fight for his life. Not far in front of him, a beautiful woman who had just come out of the bath stood mid-air, staring coldly at Yang Kai's group of four. Her figure was full and mature, her legs were long and slender, and she wore a light blue palace dress that accentuated her ample bosom and half of her shoulders. Perhaps because she had just come out of the bath, her clothes were tightly clung to her body, accentuating her graceful figure. Just standing there, she was extremely beautiful. Chapter 777. However, at this moment, her pair of beautiful eyes were filled with murderous intent, and her yuan qi was like a poisonous snake, exuding a dangerous aura, causing anyone who saw her to shudder. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he silently cursed Go Che for being such a fool. For no reason at all, he had actually provoked such a woman. When he arrived here, he didn't dare to release his divine sense to investigate carefully, but it wasn't until this woman took action just now that he realized Go Che seemed to have provoked a powerful master. The other party had clearly noticed that someone was spying on her, so the moment they left the lake, she had taken action. Go Che, on the other hand, had a reckless look on his face as he shouted, "Smelly woman, you dare hit me? So what if I hit you?" The woman glanced over at Go Che coldly. "If you dare speak rudely again, I'll kill you. Do you have such courage?" Go Che grinned wickedly. "I dare you to lay a finger on me." As soon as these words were spoken, a sharp energy beam suddenly shot towards Go Che, piercing through his shoulder while he was completely unprepared. Blood spurted out like a fountain as Go Che's face went pale as he stared blankly at the woman in the sky. He hadn't expected that the other party would really attack him without saying a word, and the sharp pain in his shoulder caused him to panic a little. Although he was a rogue, lecherous, and somewhat reckless, he wasn't stupid. Judging from the methods this woman had used over and over again, even if he was at his peak, he wouldn't be able to resist. With a bloody hole in his shoulder, Go Che became much more obedient. Although his expression was still angry, he didn't dare to speak casually, instead just staring at the woman with hatred. "Humans?" The woman curiously glanced over at Yang Kai and Ling her brow furrowing slightly. "When did the demon race and the human race start colluding together?" "Interesting." Yang Kai's expression darkened as he silently shielded Ling behind him, his yuan qi surging as he prepared to act at any moment. "Me." A disdainful sneer burst from the woman's delicate nose as she walked down from the sky, flicking her wet hair as she glanced over at Go Che and the demon raceman. "Your yuan qi and divine sense have been sealed. Was it this human boy's doing?" Go Che didn't say anything, but the other demon raceman slowly shook his head and explained, "It wasn't him. We were just trapped in a certain place and had our strength sealed. It was thanks to this human that we were able to escape." "Useless." The woman's expression became cold. "You think my demon racemen need to rely on a human's means to survive? What qualifications do you have to live with you?" With that said, he flicked his slender fingers and several bursts of energy shot out. **Xiao. Several bloody holes immediately appeared on the demon raceman's body as he let out a muffled groan. The man half knelt on the ground, gasping for breath, his eyes filled with panic and horror. The woman didn't kill him, seemingly just dissatisfied that he had borrowed Yang Kai's power and punished him slightly. "So, you have some skill?" The woman looked at Yang Kai with interest as she sent a cold wave of spiritual energy over Yang Kai's body, examining him from head to toe. "You're not that strong." The woman disdainfully withdrew her attention from Yang Kai. After pondering for a while, the woman sneered and said, "Daring to be rude to me, your courage isn't small. You should be taught a lesson, but I'm in a good mood today, so I won't kill you for the time being. Come back with me." Saying so, with a wave of her jade hand, a chariot-like artifact appeared out of thin air. In the middle of this chariot was a huge bed wrapped in a pink curtain that gave off a delicate fragrance. The woman lightly stepped onto the chariot and sent out 2 bursts of energy through the curtain towards Go Che and the demon raceman. The next moment, the two of them felt the seal on their bodies being lifted and couldn't help smiling happily. "Little human girl, come on up." The woman lay on the bed, her graceful curves exposed, a lazy look on her face as she beckoned to Ling was extremely vigilant, glancing over at Yang Kai hesitantly. Yang Kai nodded lightly, allowing Ling to step onto the chariot and stand there cautiously. "You 3 carry it. Do you need me to teach you how to do it?" the woman said lazily, her voice soft and pleasant to the ear. Yang Kai couldn't help frowning. Go Che angrily shouted, "Who do you think you are? You actually want father to be your bearer? Do you know who I am? I don't care who you are. If you don't want to die obediently, I don't mind sending you on your way." A cold light flashed across the woman's beautiful eyes, her true qi pulsing from her slender fingers, as if Go Che dared to refuse again, she would directly kill him. Go Che's eyes went bloodshot, but in the face of absolute power, he had no choice but to submit, silently walking forward and placing the chariot on his shoulder. Yang Kai and the other demon raceman glanced at each other before helplessly walking up. Following the direction the woman pointed out, the 3 coolies flew forward at an extremely fast speed. On the bed in the carriage, Ling sat upright, her back as straight as a thorn. While observing the surroundings, she followed the woman's instructions and massaged her shoulders. The woman didn't seem to have any intention of communicating with her, simply lying there with her eyes closed in a relaxed manner. A delicate fragrance scattered along the road, causing Yang Kai to feel annoyed. Originally, he had wanted to use Go Che's strength to safely leave the demon land, but now it seemed that wasn't going to happen. This guy couldn't even protect himself right now, so Yang Kai had no choice but to think of a way out. Half a day later, a huge city appeared in front of everyone's eyes. This city was located near the Sea of Sand. The tall city walls were completely molded by sand, and the entire city showed a kind of earthy yellow color. Inside this city, countless people from the demon race came and went. When the chariot arrived here, Go Che's eyes suddenly bulged as he called out, "Sand City? So you're..." "Shut up." The woman's eyes didn't open as she shouted softly. Go Che's head shrank back as he hurriedly shut up, seemingly extremely afraid, no longer displaying his previous arrogance. Yang Kai's expression changed slightly upon seeing this. Soon, the chariot arrived above Sand City, and following the woman's instructions, the group quickly arrived at a huge palace located in the center of the city. The construction of this palace was extremely special, as if it was sitting atop a mountain, several thousand meters above sea level. Flying up to this palace, standing at its highest point and overlooking everything below, the entire city was clearly visible, giving off a wonderful feeling. The style of this palace was also somewhat incongruous with the rest of the city. The floor of the palace was made of white jade, and the buildings were decorated with dragons and phoenixes. Precious crystals could be seen everywhere. When the chariot arrived, a powerful man from the demon race immediately walked over and respectfully said, "Master, you've returned?" The woman nodded lightly and stepped down from the chariot. "These people are..." The man looked at Yang Kai and the others suspiciously, but when he saw Go Che, a trace of suspicion flashed across his brow as he stared at him, a trace of familiarity flashing across his eyes. "Send someone to deliver a message to Go Cheong, tell him that if he wants to see his son safe and sound, he should prepare enough ransom for his release." The woman glanced over at Go Che and lightly ordered, "Ien, report the other three to him as well, whether he redeems them or not is up to him." Yang Kai's eyes narrowed, only now understanding that this woman had long since seen through Go Che's identity. Even if she did, she still dared to treat Go Che in such a manner. Inferring from the way she addressed Go Cheong, this woman's identity was obvious. Go Cheong was one of the 4 demon generals. The only one who dared not put him in her eyes was a fellow demon general's master. Among the 4 demon territories, there was only one woman, Xue Li. Her name was delicate and beautiful, her appearance was beautiful, and her figure was voluptuous, but her personality was also quite ruthless, cruel, and violent. The woman he had inadvertently encountered was actually a demon general. Go Che even didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and provoked her, even attempting to spy on her naked body. Yang Kai couldn't wait to cut Go Che into 1,000 pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. Subordinate thinks that Go Cheong won't care about the life or death of these 3. Xue Li's subordinate smiled gloatingly as he glanced over at Yang Kai's group, clearly taking pleasure in their misfortune. "Just report it to him." "Right, tell Go Cheong that this human brat is his son's savior," Xue Li ordered. "I'd like to see how Go Cheong will treat this matter." "Oh, that's quite surprising. The son of a dignified demon general was actually saved by a human brat. Interesting. Subordinate will report to him immediately." "Go." Xue Li waved her hand. Master Xue. Go Che quickly called out. "What's the matter?" Xue Li glanced over at him. "Can we discuss this matter again? The ransom you want, I'll find a way to get it for you myself, there's no need to trouble my father." Go Che wore an embarrassed expression as he pleaded, apparently afraid that Go Cheong would blame him and make him suffer. "That's not up to you to decide," Xue Li coldly snorted, no longer paying attention to him, turning around and walking into the palace. Immediately, another member of the demon race walked over and led Yang Kai's group of 4 inside. Each of them was assigned a room, only An Ling was placed next to Xue Li. Unlike in the Sun Clan, Xue Li seemed to be quite confident in herself. Not only did she not restrict the freedom of Yang Kai and the others, she even delivered them 3 meals a day on time. The food was also quite good, clearly not mistreating them in this regard. Although there was no one guarding him, Yang Kai still behaved himself and didn't show any signs of wanting to escape. In front of Xue Li, he felt that he couldn't escape at all. What's more, Ling was still bound to her side, so Yang Kai couldn't just abandon Ling and focus on escaping. Go Che also seemed to realize his mistake this time and spent all day listlessly, no longer showing any of his previous arrogance. Xue Li had already sent someone to deliver a letter to Go Cheong and didn't give any face to the demon general, directly demanding a large ransom. Yang Kai estimated that Go Cheong wouldn't care whether he or Ling lived or died, at most he would just ransom Go Che and the other member of the demon race. Chapter 778. Yang Kai had heard some rumors about the 4 demon general before. These 4 were the top masters of the demon race, each of them possessing unfathomable abilities and tyrannical strength. The 4 of them were stationed in the north, south, east, west, and north of the demon land, guarding its foundation and ensuring the peace of this part of the world. They generally didn't interact with one another, but for some reason, as the only woman among the 4, Xue Li didn't seem to have a very good relationship with the other 3 demon general. There were even rumors that the demon commander didn't like her very much. As such, the place she was stationed in was a relatively desolate location. Whether it was the richness of the world energy or the richness of the Earth's resources, it couldn't compare to the other 3. Yang Kai couldn't remember where he had heard this rumor, but now it seemed that it wasn't baseless. Xue Li's city was Sand City, located near the Yellow Sea, so it was indeed quite desolate. On top of that, her relationship with Go Cheong was as bad as the rumors said. However, since she was able to sit firmly in the position of Demon General, she had her own unique skills and means. Such a woman couldn't be taken lightly, so Yang Kai didn't dare to take her lightly in the slightest. Staying in the palace all day long, Yang Kai didn't show any ill intentions. Go Che recklessly tried to escape, but before he could leave the palace, he was caught red-handed and beaten by the masters around Xue Li until he was on the verge of death. After more than a month of recuperation, Go Che finally showed some signs of improvement. Learning from his mistakes, Yang Kai became more and more cautious. More than a month later, Yang Kai, who was meditating in his room, suddenly heard the sound of footsteps coming from outside, his expression becoming slightly cold as he slowly opened his eyes and stared towards the door. A moment later, the door opened and the master from the demon race who had delivered the letter to Go Cheong pushed open the door and called out to Yang Kai, "Get out here, master wants to see you." Yang Kai stood up and followed him out. As the man walked, he turned his head to look at Yang Kai. Seeing this, he couldn't help chuckling. He seemed to have encountered something very interesting, and there was a different meaning in his eyes. Yang Kai frowned as he instinctively felt that something was wrong, but he didn't ask because he knew that as a prisoner, he wouldn't be able to get anything out of him even if he asked. He might as well not go looking for trouble. Not long after, the man brought Yang Kai to a large hall. At the front of the hall, there was a spacious chair covered with a thick velvet blanket. The dark red color of the blanket made it look elegant and luxurious. Xue Li was reclining on the chair, her delicate and soft curves on full display. She rested her chin on her hand and closed her eyes to rest. In the center of the hall, high-grade spices were burning, causing the entire hall to be filled with a fragrant aroma. Ling dressed as a maid, stood beside Xue Li with a restrained expression. Seeing Yang Kai arrive, Ling's beautiful eyes lit up. She hurriedly cast a concerned look at him. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. He signaled that he was safe. Since being captured and brought here, the two of them had not seen each other again. Yang Kai had been in his room all this time while Ling had been with Xue Li. In this palace in Sand City, she was the only human, so Ling had naturally placed all her hopes on Yang Kai, fearing he would encounter some kind of accident. Now that she saw him safe and sound, Ling couldn't help quietly breathing a sigh of relief, secretly smiling towards Yang Kai, not daring to make the slightest sound. Yang Kai looked around and found that Go Che and the other man from the demon race were also standing here, both of their expressions filled with fear and dread, like mice seeing a cat, trembling in fear. "Master, everyone is here," Xue Li's subordinate reported softly. Xue Li nodded lightly, slowly opening her beautiful dreamy eyes and glancing around, slowly straightening her body and stretching her waist. With this action of hers, the short shirt on her upper body was pulled open, revealing her flat and fair belly and delicate navel. Spring filled the air. Besides Yang Kai, who had been staring at her, no one dared to look at her. Xue Li's sharp eyes immediately turned towards Yang Kai, causing him to feel as if he had been burned. Yang Kai instantly felt some pain on his face, but his expression didn't change, remaining calm. Xue Li didn't seem to have any intention of pursuing such a trivial matter, simply opening her mouth and saying, "Go Cheung has replied." Go Che's body trembled as he pursed his dry lips, looking up at Xue Li, his face twitching as he asked softly, what was his attitude? "Haha, you're his son, now that you've fallen into my hands, what attitude do you think he would have? Yen, your old man paid enough ransom to redeem you." Hearing this, Go Che's expression changed, a mix of relief and panic. Relief was that he could finally leave Xue Li's place, but panic was that when he returned home, he would inevitably be beaten again. This kind of contradictory mood was intuitively displayed on his face, making his expression look particularly interesting. "What about me?" the other demon raceman asked in a low voice. "You were also redeemed." Xue Li nodded lightly, smiling as she stared towards Yang Kai meaningfully. "You were also redeemed, as well as this little human girl. Go Cheung redeemed all of you." And Ling froze for a moment before a happy expression appeared on her face. On the other hand, Go Che and the other demon raceman both showed a surprised look upon hearing this, glancing towards Yang Kai before lowering their heads, their expressions complicated. Yang Kai frowned, not only not showing the slightest joy, his expression instead becoming gloomy as he muttered, "Are all you demon race people so generous?" "Chem." Xue Li's brow rose as she stared at Yang Kai, suddenly smiling. "Go Cheung isn't generous, just this once. The ransom you asked for isn't small, right?" Yang Kai stared at her deeply, even facing one of the 4 demon generals, he didn't show the slightest fear, instead maintaining a calm expression. "It's not much, but it's not a small amount, enough for Go Cheung to be annoyed for a while." Xue Li smiled and nodded, staring at Yang Kai with interest. In front of her, few people could be as calm and natural as Yang Kai, even Go Cheung's son was somewhat timid. Comparing the two, Xue Li suddenly felt that this human was quite interesting. At the very least, his courage was great, even better than many of the demon races. Yang Kai nodded lightly before suddenly turning to Go Che and asking, "Brother Go Che, this time Senior Go Cheung has gone to great lengths, what do you say?" "Ah!" Go Che froze for a moment, not daring to look straight at Yang Kai, his eyes flashing as he muttered, "I have nothing to say." As he spoke, his expression became a little guilty. "Does Brother Go Che really have nothing to say?" Yang Kai's mouth curled into a sneer as he asked aggressively. Go Che slowly shook his head. The demon raceman next to him also lowered his head, not saying a word. Inside the hall, Ling stared at him suspiciously, not understanding why Yang Kai's attitude towards Go Che had suddenly changed, seemingly becoming somewhat cold. Xue Li and her subordinate, on the other hand, were all smiling as they watched the show, not showing any intention of interrupting. "Good." Yang Kai grinned, "Then Brother Go Che, let's part ways here." "Haha, our friendship was truly short-lived." This sentence caused Go Che to feel even more ashamed, his face turning red. Yang Kai no longer paid any attention to him and instead turned to look at Xue Li, asking seriously, "Senior, if I said that I refused the ransom Go Cheung paid for me, would you kill me?" "Oh!" Hearing this, Xue Li's beautiful eyes couldn't help flashing a look of approval and surprise as she muttered, "You refused? You actually refused?" "Yes, I refuse." "Ha ha." Xue Li giggled, her chest shaking as she giggled. Her subordinate also smiled as he stared at Yang Kai with a meaningful look on his face, as if his vision had been broadened. A moment later, Xue Li's smile gradually faded as she softly said, "It stands to reason that you refusing Go Cheung is equivalent to depriving me of some benefits, so naturally I will kill you. After raising you for so long, wouldn't I have suffered a loss? However, once the ransom is here, there is no reason for anyone to take it back, and since you've slapped Go Cheung in the face for me, I'll spare your life." Yang Kai's face went black as his expression became gloomy. Xue Li's words were insidious, directly pushing him to the opposite side of Go Cheung. Although this was only a trivial matter, for a master like Go Cheung, it was likely a loss of face. He had kindly offered to pay a ransom for Yang Kai, but he had been decisively refused. If word of this spread, it would only cause the world to laugh at Yang Kai for looking down on him. As a demon general, being looked down upon by a mere human, Go Cheung would definitely be furious. Even if the truth wasn't so, I'll agree to your request. Xue Li's expression became solemn as she quickly waved her hand towards Go Che and the man from the demon race. Scram, if you don't get out of the range of my divine sense within half a stick of incense, don't blame me for being impolite. As soon as these words fell, Go Che and the demon race man turned into streams of light and disappeared from the palace without looking back. In the blink of an eye, they were already a few thousand meters away and were using their full strength to flee. Xue Li wasn't joking. Her divine sense had indeed been locked onto Go Che and the man from the demon race. If she could still sense them when the time was up, she really would kill them. This was a woman with a heart as vicious as a snake. You humans really are quite shrewd, Xue Li said sarcastically. But since you refused the ransom Go Cheung paid for you, you need to prove that you have value in living. My sand city doesn't raise trash. You really won't let me go. Yang Kai spat disdainfully. Let you go? Xue Li sneered. Humans who enter my sand city only have one path to walk, and that is death. It's just that you seem a bit different from the rest, so I don't want to kill you right now, but don't disappoint me, otherwise I'll make you experience something worse than death. Saying so, Xue Li stood up, seemingly preparing to leave. Senior. And Ling hurriedly called out, a pleading look flashing across her beautiful eyes. Can you give us some time to talk? Xue Li frowned but didn't object, simply leaving, seemingly acquiescing. Chapter 779. After Xue Li left, her subordinate chuckled a few times and said, If you have something to say it quickly, don't make me wait too long, my temper isn't good either. Saying so, he also walked out of the palace. Only Yang Kai and An Ling were left in the hall. The Saintess of Nine Heavens Holy Land hurriedly came over and asked Yang Kai about his well-being, her concern evident in her words. Yang Kai repeatedly assured her that he was fine and then asked about her current situation. An Ling smiled bitterly and said, That senior didn't embarrass me, she just placed me by her side to take care of her, so you don't need to worry about me. But you, why did you refuse the ransom Go Cheung paid for us? Do you think I shouldn't have refused? I don't know, but that Xue Li isn't a good person. I was afraid that if I stayed here too long, something bad would happen. She isn't a good person, and Go Cheung is even worse, Yang Kai coldly snorted. The reason I refused was because I wanted to find a way to survive. Ah, what do you mean? And Ling was confused. Yang Kai explained carefully, if I accepted his ransom, it would be tantamount to owing him my life, so if he had any excessive demands, I wouldn't have been able to refuse. But, you also saved Go Che's life, so in that case, 1 for 1, shouldn't that cancel each other out? Are you stupid? Yang Kai knocked her forehead lightly. That's the biggest problem. And Ling rubbed her forehead and said aggrievedly, Explain it clearly, I don't understand. Ha! Yang Kai shook his head and looked at her, sighing, It really wasn't easy for you to grow up. It's all thanks to your Nine Heavens Holy Land that you were raised in the sect. If you had come out alone, who knows how many times you would have died already. And Ling pouted. I saved Go Che, and this life-saving grace should have been the basis for us to leave the demon land, but now it has become a fatal problem. Think about Go Che's identity. His father is Go Cheung, the demon general. Didn't Shirley say this before we came here? The son of the demon general was saved by a human. What he means is that he shouldn't have been saved by me. At the very least, he shouldn't be a human. If I had really followed Go Cheung's wishes and let him redeem me, I would have died on the road in just a few days. Ah! And Ling cried out in alarm and covered her mouth. Go Cheung won't allow news that would harm his reputation and dignity to spread. The best way to do this is to silence everyone. That way, no one will know that his son was once saved by a human, Yang Kai said with a cold smile, a shrewd light flashing in his eyes. That's just your guess, isn't it? And Ling still didn't quite believe him. It's not a guess, it's a fact. Yang Kai concluded, Go Cheung is an ambitious and ruthless character. How could he be so kind as to redeem his son while also bringing you and me along? You should know that the ransom he paid wasn't small at all. He clearly has some kind of ulterior motive. If I'm not mistaken, on the way home, Go Che already had masters waiting in ambush for us. Once we showed up, what awaited us was a ruthless slaughter. And Ling Er's tender body trembled slightly as she couldn't help feeling a sense of relief that she had just escaped death. This point, Shirley is also well aware, but she didn't show any signs of wanting to wake me up. That woman really is insidious. Yang Kai ground his teeth. No wonder when you refused just now, she smiled so strangely. So that's how it was, and Ling Er suddenly realized and couldn't help feeling a deep sense of admiration towards Yang Kai. If it had been up to her, she would have happily left together with Go Che, perhaps even fantasizing about how Go Cheung would thank her for saving his son, but never would she have imagined that the murderous intent would be hidden on the other side. A trace of fear welled up in Ling Er's heart as she angrily shouted, that Go Che is an ungrateful dog, he should have understood his father's temperament, right? Mph, he couldn't be any more clear, Yang Kai sneered. Then we shouldn't have brought him out of that mysterious small world before. And Ling Er angrily said, It was my miscalculation. At that time, I only wanted to borrow his identity and status, but unfortunately, my own cleverness backfired on me. However, he did play a role, at the very least he brought us out of that desert. If it weren't for him, we might have been lost in there for the rest of our lives. Even if we managed to escape from that desert, we would have been chased down and captured by other members of the demon race, not having the opportunity to come to Sand City. Everything had its pros and cons, it all depended on one's perspective. Go Che was indeed ruthless, but Yang Kai had no intention of truly forming a friendship with him, so there was nothing to be disappointed about. Yang Kai slowly shook his head, enough of that, what we need to consider now is how to survive from Xueli's hands. You stay close to her and pay attention to her surroundings, see if there is anything we can use to our advantage. Perhaps an inadvertent discovery will allow us to find a way out of this mess. Yen and Ling Er nodded heavily, inexplicably feeling as if she and Yang Kai were depending on one another. After talking for a while longer, Xueli's subordinate called out from outside the hall, prompting Yang Kai to bid farewell to Ling Er before being led back to his room. Time passed by, and everything was peaceful. Since the day Yang Kai refused Go Cheung's ransom, he seemed to have been forgotten by Xueli, and for a full 2 months, no one paid him any attention. Yang Kai was also happy to be idle, spending all day meditating and cultivating while communicating with the divine tree. After 2 months, the divine tree's sentience had grown rapidly, and it was now able to use its divine sense to carry out simple conversations with Yang Kai. From Yang Kai, the divine tree had learned a lot, and its wisdom had also grown rapidly. Now, it had the IQ of a 6 or 7-year-old child, and besides being a little naughty, everything else about it was fine. The divine tree had now taken root in the black book space, so Yang Kai could replenish his yang attribute energy from it at any time, and even his spiritual energy could be replenished. It could be said that he was carrying a huge energy warehouse with him, convenient and fast to the extreme. After 2 months of cultivation, Yang Kai's strength had also greatly improved. On this day, when Yang Kai's soul avatar entered the black book space, he suddenly found something wrong. The precious ores he had stored in his black book space seemed to have disappeared 1 or 2 times at a time. These ores were collected by Yang Kai when he entered Starfield last time. After the Starfield storm swept through the Starfield, a lot of these ores had been left behind, each of which was quite rare and precious. Yang Kai had wanted to use these ores to create some artifacts, but he hadn't had the time nor could he find a suitable artifact refiner to do so. Yang Kai wasn't too clear about the quantity of these ores, but he was keenly aware that they had indeed disappeared. In their original places, there were some scattered stones left behind. These stones were completely useless impurities, in other words, the original essence of the ores had all disappeared. Yang Kai was puzzled, so he sent his soul avatar into the divine tree's heart and asked the divine tree. He originally thought that the divine tree had secretly absorbed the essence of these ores, but unexpectedly, the divine tree shook its head, indicating that it had nothing to do with it. Yang Kai couldn't help laughing and didn't ask any more questions. The divine tree's intelligence was only equivalent to that of a child, so lying at this age was normal. Yang Kai naturally didn't blame it, and if the divine tree needed these ores, Yang Kai was willing to give them all to it. Good, if these stones are useful to you, just use them. If they're gone, I'll look for more. Right, there's also that drop of spirit liquid over there. You can absorb a drop every day, it may be helpful to your growth. The divine tree suddenly rejoiced, immediately stretching out a branch and carefully absorbing a drop of the myriad drug liquid, a moment later letting out a satisfied sigh. Yang Kai looked at it with a smile, but at that moment, he suddenly noticed that someone was approaching him. Quickly notifying the divine tree, he released his soul avatar. Just as he opened his eyes, the door to his room was pushed open and Xueli's subordinate beckoned to Yang Kai, indifferently saying, "Come out, master wants to see you." Kai Yang furrowed his brow and followed behind the man as he was told. Yang Kai didn't know what this person's cultivation was, but from the degree of importance Xueli placed on him and the pressure this man put on him, it was very likely he was a Saint Realm master. However, the demon race generally lived longer than the human race, so from his appearance, this man didn't look very old, probably only around 30 years old. He was quite handsome, and from time to time he would reveal a frivolous look. Only when facing Xueli would this man show a serious expression, not daring to show the slightest disrespect. "Friend, how should I address you?" Yang Kai suddenly asked. The man turned his head and glanced over at Yang Kai, chuckling. "Master said you have courage, boy, and now it seems that is indeed the case. You don't seem to have the slightest awareness of being a prisoner." Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders and said indifferently, "Although I am under house arrest here, you haven't done anything to me for so long, which means I still have some value to you. What kind of awareness do I need to have?" "Boy, you're smart enough, I like it." The man grinned, hesitating for a moment before saying, "Call me Yumo. You demon race people all have strange names." Yang Kai shook his head. "I think you humans have strange names." Yumo smiled lightly. "Why does your master want to see me this time?" Yang Kai asked again. "I don't know, maybe he thinks you have no value and wants to kill you." Yumo said with a gloating look, whistling frivolously, "So you'd best be mentally prepared, or else you may not be able to die in peace." Yang Kai's mouth twitched, but his expression didn't change. Yumo observed Yang Kai's expression and nodded, thinking that this little brat was really different from the rest. If it had been an ordinary person hearing this news, they would have been scared witless, but this boy didn't seem worried at all. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.